Chapter 16:15. The sudden voice outside the forest caused the mysterious woman to be a bit absent-minded. Her snow-white skin was still flushed red. She casually tidied up her clothes, and her expression became solemn and cold again. She coldly said to the person behind her, "What is it?" Her expression was cold and incomparably deep. The forest suddenly became quiet. Guyue's voice came again. There was clearly some awkwardness in his voice. "This matter is very important. Guyue, it is better for you to see the palace master." After a slight pause, the mysterious woman turned out to be the palace master of Jutian Palace, Duanmu Xiaoman. Su Yi had inadvertently offended the palace master. If Guyue knew of this, he would probably be scared out of his wits. Tightly pursing her lips, the killing intent in Duanmu Xiaoman's eyes became even stronger. Her tone carried anger as she said, "If it is for Su Yi, then there is no need. He is already a dead man." Guyue immediately became very nervous outside the forest. His words were hurried. "Why, Palace Master, what happened?" Seeing that Duanmu Xiaoman didn't reply to him, old man Guyu leaped a few times, landing in the middle of the forest like a giant bird in human form. From afar, he gazed at Duanmu Xiaoman's palm that was releasing a dazzling light of yuan qi. "Palace Master, you can't. Have mercy." In a moment of desperation, the faint red light in Guyue's eyes was like a flame. A blazing energy fluctuation spread out from his palm and whistled through the air towards Duanmu Xiaoman's palm. Bang! Duanmu Xiaoman turned her hand and shot out another stream of yuan qi. Her expression changed rapidly. In an instant, the yuan qi swept through the forest. The light overflowed into the sky. The entire forest was dyed, and the sky changed color. An incomparably loud collision shook the heaven and earth. The boundless energy wave blew the entire forest to the ground. Grass, trees, sand, and stones were all sent flying. The momentum was monstrous and made people's hearts numb. Amidst the flying leaves, a figure was thrown high into the air and smashed heavily under a big tree. Dozens of big trees behind him split apart, and an astonishing sonic boom resounded. It was Guyue. He was lying on the ground with blood flowing out from his mouth. He looked at Duanmu Xiaoman in a daze. "Congratulations, Palace Master. You are one step closer to the legendary Celestial Realm." PFFF. As soon as he finished speaking, old man Guyue felt an unparalleled strength begin to surge within his body. His meridians and internal organs felt as if they were being squeezed together, and the blood that had accumulated in his chest all spurted out. Duanmu Xiaoman's back was facing old man Guyue, and the surroundings were extremely quiet. An extremely obscure aura filled the air, and killing intent surged into the sky like rolling waves. "Guyue, when did you become so unruly?" Duanmu Xiaoman said coldly after a while. The water of the 5 elements pool shone brightly and wrapped Su Yi in it. The night wind blew and the wind whistled. Guyue had returned to his room. Li Shiran and Ah Chu looked nervous and worried. "Master, are you okay? Did you see Brother Su?" Shaking his head slightly, Guyue coughed and said, "I'm fine. I saw Su Yi. He can participate in the soul competition tomorrow. You don't have to worry. Go back and prepare." "Really?" The siblings were overjoyed. Guyue's words were the biggest promise to them. They immediately breathed a long sigh of relief. Li Shiran's eyes relaxed, and she was no longer worried. She bowed slightly and said, "Master, I'll chew and I'll go back first. Have a good rest." Tian Wu, who had been standing at the side, frowned. Under the dim light, his eyes were full of seriousness. "Master, are you really okay?" Guyue's breathing instantly became heavier. He condensed his handprints and circulated his spiritual qi rapidly to stop his injuries. He said, "Whether I'm okay or not depends on tomorrow. I don't know what Su Yi did to make Palace Master Duanmu so angry. Could it be because he trespassed on the back peak?" Guyue waved his hand and said no. The Palace Master said that the restriction was for Zhuqiu Feng and his people. It must be Su Yi's problem. By the way, how are the preparations? Guyue said faintly. His wounds were still bleeding, and he was in a bad mood. It seemed that the palace master did not hold back on Guyue. Chapter 16:16. Sure, Ran and Achu souls are of high quality. Just a little bit, and they already have a general understanding of medicine and artifact. Did Master go to the other continents to borrow the materials? Guyue softly said, yes, but compared to Zhuqiu Feng and the others, they can also find what we can find. So it's very difficult to win by surprise. Tian Wu's face immediately became worried. If Su Yi couldn't come back, Juqian Palace's sole competition would be in danger. Now that things have come to this, we can only take one step at a time. Guyue softly sighed. Elder Guyue wasn't worried about winning the sole competition, but whether the Juqian Palace Master could forgive Su Yi and let Su Yi leave alive. Where's Miss Han? Guyue softly asked when he didn't see Han Yuro's figure after such a thing happened as soon as he came back. Tian Wu bowed and said, right, this disciple forgot to report this matter. Miss Han said she had to go out and will return before the competition. Elder Guyue's weathered face gradually frowned and softly murmured, please don't provoke that person. Juqian Palace is already in troubled times and has enough internal troubles. Don't let an external trouble come. Then he looked at Tian Wu and said, Chong, Ling Yu Peak will still be under your control in the future. Grow up quickly and be responsible. Only then can I rest assured. Tian Wu also knew that he didn't do well enough in the matter of Su Yi being injured by Elder Tong. He instantly lowered his head and agreed before returning to his room to prepare for the next day's Jutian Soul competition. Dawn was breaking in the east, and the morning glow filled the sky. Like a sharp sword, the sunlight cut through the silent night. Today was different from the past. It was the day that everyone in Jutian Palace looked forward to, the Jutian Soul competition. The Jutian Soul competition was divided into 4 segments: martial cultivation, alchemy, tool forging, and soul refining. Martial cultivation was the first part of the Driver Heavenly Soul tournament. Even though Driver Heavenly Palace was proficient in alchemy, smithing, and soul arts, they couldn't ignore the martial path. In the 6 continents, 3 prefectures, and 1 sea, a soul controller was an extremely terrifying force. A soul controller was definitely a martial artist, but a martial artist was not necessarily a soul controller. Other than using Yuan Qi martial techniques, using pill recipes, magic tools, or drawing out remnant souls, these were all within the permitted range. In the outside world, any method could be relied on to survive at a critical moment. Therefore, today's Heavenly Imperial Soul competition began with alchemy, followed by artifact forging, soul refining, and finally, one person from each team would be selected to participate in the martial cultivation competition. From a certain perspective, the winner of this competition would be the number 1 person in Drive Heavenly Palace. At any given time, martial power was the deciding factor. At the same time, the Heavenly Rider Soul competition also stipulated that because alchemy and weapon refinement were extremely time-consuming projects, they would be evaluated based on the grade of the alchemy and weapon refinement, as well as the completion within the stipulated time. If they were both high-grade magic tools, the winner would be determined based on the degree of completion. If the degree of completion was the same, the winner would be determined based on the grade. Therefore, the grade of the cauldron and materials would greatly help the contestants win. Through the light brown silk covering the earth, the first rays of the morning sun gently awakened the Drive Heavenly Mountains. Looking from afar, the spirit energy of Drive Heavenly River was denser today. The milky white aura of heaven and earth was like a divine light blocking the valley. Guyue, Tian Wu, Li Ran, Chu, and 2 other disciples were waiting behind them. They were all ready and standing at the top of Ling Yu Peak, looking into the distance. Ran, Chu, today is the day you 3 make your debut in Drive Heavenly River. Let Drive Heavenly Palace see how outstanding this old man's 3 good disciples are. Guyue, who hadn't slept all night, stroked his beard and encouraged everyone to smile. Tian Wu, Ran, and Chu smiled cryptically, feeling a little guilty in their hearts. Right now, the best materials were the materials Gyuep borrowed from the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea, as well as the Tao Cauldron Gyue had bestowed upon him. Let's go. Gyue's expression instantly calmed down. Whoosh whoosh. Spatial ripples quickly spread out, and Elder Gyue turned into a huge stream of light, overflowing with red light. Behind him, 4 faint streams of light flew away. The drive heavenly river stood tall and upright. The central shock peak was especially lively today. The central shock plaza, which had been destroyed by Su, Yi, and Elder Tong, had been completely repaired. An extremely strong aura greeted them, and everyone was secretly shocked. This must be the result of the addition of an extremely powerful restriction. Just how intense was the battle between Su, Yi, and Elder Tong? Everyone was extremely shocked. It was hard to imagine how earth-shattering that battle was. Most of the 100 scattered teams had also arrived early. Small teams of 5, led by their respective elders, stood on the high platform. Some people who had a good relationship with each other exchanged greetings and discussed the Drive Heavenly Soul competition that was about to begin. On the high platform, Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and Cheng Gaoming were already seated on chairs. All of them were dressed in luxurious clothes and had solemn expressions. Their respective disciples were lined up on the high platform near the plaza. Zhuqiu Feng's expression was solemn and grave. Today was very important to him. The hearts of the people and his strength were his final chance to prove himself to the Drive Heavenly Palace. As for Wu Kuan and Cheng Gaoming, they were indeed frowning as they looked gloomily at the excited faces on the high platforms. Their disciples had participated in the incident with Su Yi and were heavily injured by Su Yi. Their hearts and souls were also greatly damaged in the mountain guarding formation. If it wasn't for the accumulation of medicinal pills, we wouldn't even be able to participate today. Wu Kuan said fiercely. Like Cheng Gaoming, he hoped to hear the news of Su Yi's death today. It would be best if She was executed by the palace master on the spot, because only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. The peak behind him was still calm, as before. The Duanmu Shaoman would participate in the Drive Heavenly Soul competition every single time. But in the recent few years, the Duanmu Shaoman had gradually stopped participating directly and directly listened to the reports of the acting palace master instead. Will the Duanmu Shaoman participate in the Drive Heavenly Soul competition this time because of Su Yi? Zhuqiu Feng thought like this in his heart. Since the beginning, Zhuqiu Feng had never thought that Su Yi would die. If the unpredictable Duanmu Shaoman suddenly flared up, then the situation would be difficult to deal with. Vice Palace Masters, please instruct the experts and elders to support me today. Zhuqiu Feng had a solemn expression. Wu Kuan and Cheng Gaoming glanced at each other, and then a complicated and nervous expression instantly surged into their eyes. Everyone knew how terrifying the Duanmu Shaoman was, so they gritted their teeth and left to make arrangements. After a short while, when everyone had roughly arrived, Zhuqiu Feng tidied up his clothes and emotions. His luxurious clothes were like satin, and the thick aura he emanated revealed the might and pressure of a person in a high position. He cleared his throat as his deep and aged voice spread throughout the entire square, and an enormous gale swept out like a wave towards the entire platform. The Drive Heavenly Soul competition is at hand. The rules are the same as before. It'll be divided into pill refinement, equipment refinement, soul control, and martial cultivation. The pill refinement and equipment refinement are divided into 2 days. The second day is the soul control competition, and the third day is martial cultivation. It's divided into 3 days in total, and it can't be delayed at all. Now, all the participating disciples will be led by the elders to the square to verify their identities. Come, wonderful book room. Chapter 16-17. Li Shiran and Ah Chu, who had already stood still, saw such a grand scene for the first time. Colorful flags fluttered in the sky, and the air was slowly filled with condensed soul energy. On the square of thousands of people, the mighty soul pressure spread out impressively, carrying a domineering aura. Everyone's heart was filled with horror. No wonder they say that the imperial palace doesn't move, but once it moves, it can shake the heavens. Just the pressure of these thousands of people is enough to destroy a dozen second-rate sects. Achu looked around, her eyes full of expectation. Li Shiran's beautiful face changed slightly, her eyes full of expectation. She whispered softly, "Imperial Palace, I must learn from Master. I must become an excellent alchemist." Hearing Zhuqiu Feng's voice that filled the sky like the sound of heaven, Achu said, "Why do we need to verify their identity?" Tian Wu turned his head and said softly, "For fairness, all 103 teams participating in the competition must know who is participating and confirm the list. If it's a disciple of the Imperial Palace, it's fine. If it's not, we must find out if it's the help of other palaces. It's to avoid unnecessary trouble." "I see." Hearing this, Achu and Li Shiran followed Tian Wu and Elder Gyue to line up and talk about the Imperial Palace Soul competition. Bang! On the square, there was a smooth, five-colored soul-testing crystal that was as thin as a cicada's wing. It was polished to be extremely smooth and bright by the people of the Imperial Palace. The light around it was like a long divine brilliance, very eye-catching. This soul-testing crystal can test your soul quality and soul strength. It can also show you information related to the Imperial Palace. You just need to stand in front and receive the test. "I just tested my soul quality 2 days ago." Achu's eyes lit up. Ahem. Li Shiran looked nervous, and Elder Gyue also became slightly gloomy. He said, "Achu, go test it again. Don't say anything else." Achu seemed to feel that she had done something wrong and lowered her head. After all, meeting the palace master was not a trivial matter. She could not talk nonsense in troubled times. Old man Guyu put his hands behind his back and frowned again. Worry once again crept into his heart as he thought. Could it be that Su Brat didn't make it? "Palace Lord, for the sake of the Imperial Palace, please don't kill him." Guyue's heart was filled with sorrow. At this time, the elders of the 103 teams were exchanging greetings with each other. The teams at the back were bored and began to communicate with each other. "Look, that's the man from Lingyue Peak. Senior brother Tian Ho, ranked 10th. He's not weak, but the ones behind him seem to be very weak." From time to time, the disciples of the Command Heavenly Palace would look at Lingyue Peak and speak with disdain. Without Su Yi, Lingyue Peak really can't bring out anyone else. "All the small fries have gone up." That's right, that's right. "You don't say. Those 2 children aren't adults yet. How can their soul cultivation be so low? Are you here to tell jokes?" Ha ha. As soon as he finished speaking, several disciples of the Command Heavenly Palace laughed unscrupulously and kept pointing at the people of Lingyue Peak. Li Shiran and Achu were embarrassed and angry at the same time. Their faces turned red, while Tian Ho's expression changed. His eyes were full of anger. "I thought that Lingyue Peak, ranked 7th, would be able to take a look at them this year with Su Yi. Now it seems that they're just SOSO. That's right. From top to bottom, they're all trash. The master has lost his power, and the disciples are unlucky too." Boom. When he heard this, Tian Ho's eyes were suddenly filled with anger. It was as if lava had erupted from his eyes. He twisted his body, and his primordial chi surged. Like a ghost, he rushed in front of the disciples who had spoken rudely. Slap! 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 3 crisp slaps resounded throughout the square. Blood splattered everywhere, accompanied by snow-white teeth that fell to the white jade floor. The bustling Zhongshan Square suddenly became dead silent. Everyone who was talking turned around to watch the show. With Su Yi's life and death unknown, the morale of Lingyue Peak was low. Tian Chong was already angry. Even without Su Yi, he was still the 10th senior brother of the Command Heavenly Palace. The Peak Master of Lingyue Peak was also Elder Gyue of the Central Province Branch Palace. How could he allow anyone to order him around? "This is the first and last time. Soul match, don't let me meet you. Otherwise, you're on your own." Tian Ho looked coldly at the disciples and the leading elder. In fact, Elder Gyue had heard what they said just now. He He didn't stop them and let Tian Ho teach them a lesson because he wanted to establish his power before the competition. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No matter how weak they weren't a team led by an ordinary elder. Tian Ho, come back. Elder Guyue said faintly. His eyes were lax, but they were filled with pressure. There was a hint of pride and disdain in his eyes. The pressure was impressive and intimidating. Gulp. The onlookers swallowed their saliva. They stopped talking about Lingwe Peak and Su Yi. Yes, Master. Tian Ho bowed respectfully to Elder Guyue and returned to the team. He turned around and gave them a cold look. It sent chills down their spines and made their hair stand on end. Elder Guyue's face darkened when he turned around. He said to the crowd, "Be calm and collected. Concentrate and cultivate your soul. Get ready." Achu and Li Shiran nodded gently and secretly gave Tian Ho a thumbs up. They raised their eyes and looked at the majestic Zhongjin Peak in front of them. They were worried. After the identity verification, the competition is about to begin. "Brother Su, why aren't you here yet?" Achu was a little anxious. On the high platform, Elder Tong and Elder Leader shouted at the same time. Next team, Lingwe Peak. Elder Guyue's aura was long. His usual kind face had become extremely fierce. Everyone treated today's battle as a battle. Not only was it to protect Lingwe Peak, but it was also to protect the honor of the Palace Masters faction. Before it even began, the solemn atmosphere indicated that this year's Heavenly Palace Soul Tournament would be different from the past. It might be a very important fork in the Heavenly Palace's history. Let's go. Tian Ho, Shiran, Achu, Lianfeng, Lianjing, you guys go up. Because Han Yuro and Su Yi had not returned, Lingwe Peak had chosen Lianfeng and Lianjing, the two disciples of the Lian generation, as candidates. Elder Guyue stood below the platform. His eyes were filled with determination and calmness. The aura in the air spread out for no reason. It was like a long aura that crossed the heavens and the earth had swept through the plaza. Everyone was shocked. Zhuqiu Feng and the two sect masters' faces twitched. They looked a little embarrassed and sighed inwardly. This old man is still strong. His cultivation is even stronger than the left palace masters. Chen Gaoming said anxiously. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 16-18. After the commotion caused by Guyue 2 days ago, the three palace masters and Elder Guyue had completely fallen out. In the end, no one benefited from it, and Su even died for nothing. At this moment, Wu Kuan and Chen Gaoming were avoiding Guyue's gaze. They didn't make a move to stop Elder Guyue's disciples when they saw them causing trouble. They thought that it was better to avoid trouble. Even if they didn't have the authority, Guyue's strength couldn't be underestimated. If they really fought, then no one would end up well with all the elders present, no matter if it was the Palace Master's side or Zhuqiu Feng's side. Both of them could find a reason to cause trouble. It just depended on who couldn't maintain their composure. Elder Tong, test Lingwe Peak. You know what to do if you don't have the qualifications. Zhuqiu Feng grunted coldly, and his robe fluttered in an extremely imposing manner. On the other hand, Elder Tong, who was beaten up by Elder Guyue to the point his parents couldn't recognize him, instantly trembled when he heard Zhuqiu Feng, and he raised his eyes to glance at Guyue while complaining incessantly in his heart. Yes, exalt Lord. He hurriedly bowed and walked up the soul measuring platform. Li Shiran, Chu, and the other members of Lingwe Peak glanced at Guyue, and when Guyue nodded lightly, they walked up the platform secretly. In an instant, the attention of everyone swiftly moved onto the group from Lingwe Peak, and their gazes didn't move as they were deeply afraid of missing a good show. Look, they're here. I heard that those two siblings are Elder Guyue's new disciples. Oomph. We'll know their strength with a single test. Tian Ho was in the limelight earlier. Look at Elder Tong. His gaze was like a blade. Since he was beaten up by Guyue to such an extent, his disciple would surely suffer. Elder Tong rubbed the corner of his eye that was still swollen, while flames of rage burned in his heart, and he glared at Li Shiran and at Chu as he grunted. All of you, stand on the soul measuring platform one by one. Hurry up. There are so many people behind. Don't waste time. Li Ran nodded gently and stood on top of the soul measuring stone under the watchful eyes of everyone present. The sky was instantly filled with 5 colors of yuan qi that surrounded Li Ran. It spun back and forth and didn't disperse for a long time. Finally, a small dark cloud condensed in the sky. A bolt of lightning surged out of it, and the 5-colored ribbon intertwined with each other. In an instant, it merged with the soul measuring stone. Rumble. The soul measuring stone emitted a buzzing sound, and the sky was filled with wind and thunder. Li Ran felt an extremely comfortable soul energy flowing back and forth in her body, as if her entire soul had been cleansed by spring water. It was very comfortable. Everyone exclaimed as they pointed at the strange phenomenon that had suddenly appeared in the sky. Their eyes flashed with a strange light. This girl is of high quality. He was actually able to trigger the soul measuring origin stone and cause a phenomenon. Not bad. That's right. Our Juqian Palace's soul-testing vitality stone is different from other vitality stones. It's made from hundreds of soul-testing vitality stones. Its resistance to pressure is extremely strong. This girl's test actually had such an effect. It's unbelievable. How old is this girl? Are there no cowards among the direct disciples? Old man Guyue stroked his beard with satisfaction. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and he was filled with a complacent and relaxed expression. Then, he looked at Elder Tong with a solemn expression. Elder Tong narrowed his eyes and carefully looked at the soul measuring stone. Li Ran's test performance was completely out of his expectations. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly as he thought to himself, no wonder Guyue insisted on bringing the siblings to participate in the Juqian Soul competition. Other than Su Yi, it turns out that Lingyue Peak has many other people. Elder Tong turned around and glanced at Zhuqiu Feng. Zhuqiu Feng gently shook his head. His brows were like mountains as he signaled for them to continue and act according to the situation. Rumble. After half a day, the natural phenomenon began to dissipate, and the gloomy sky began to clear up. Everyone's face was filled with deep surprise. TSK Tisk. Li Ran's information appeared on the soul measuring stone. Li Ran, half-step heaven-grade soul quality, intermediate grade, first-grade cultivation, entered Juqian Palace for 0 years. Whoosh! Instantly, waves of exclamations and uproars resounded from the surrounding crowd, and their gazes shot towards Li Ran, who was on the high platform like sharp arrows. Li Ran pursed her lips tightly while she stared blankly. She knew since long ago that she would definitely face such a situation, but when she arrived at such a situation, she still felt quite shocked in her heart. So it's only the intermediate grade, first grade. She's even inferior to the disciples of Arch K Lake. Ha ha ha. Yeah, so what if she's half-step heaven grade? She's still a piece of trash. I'm dying of laughter. Did she come out to make a fool of herself? Ha, you're just bluffing. Go down. People in the crowd ceaselessly jeered, and Li Ran's face was red like a tomato. Elder Tong instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her cultivation was actually so low, and he revealed a cold smile. Oof, what should I do? She's even inferior to a pawn under me. Forget it. Zhuqiu Feng, who was sitting upright on the high platform, looked at Li Ran, and a wave of fluctuation appeared in his eyes. He said thoughtfully, she's been in the palace for 0 years. After that, he raised his hand to signal Elder Tong to continue. Then, Li Ran timidly walked to Elder Guyue's side, and Guyue patted Li Ran's head with a smile. Ran, you did well. Li Ran smiled shyly. To be able to obtain the approval of Elder Guyue, the ridicule of other unimportant people was nothing at all. Sister, don't be afraid. Let me go up and scare their eyes out. Seeing her sister being ridiculed like this by everyone, Ah Chu's hands had long turned purplish red. She clenched her teeth and emanated a cold aura. Right at this moment, Elder Tong on the high platform said, Ling Yu Feng, next. After seeing Li Ran's performance, Elder Tong continued to call out the next person with a mocking expression. From time to time, he would glance at Elder Gyue from the corner of his eyes, revealing a pity of a hero past his prime. Chew or go. Let the rooster see the world. Let them see Ling Yu foam. Gyue spoke to Ah Chu in a low voice, and he cast a gaze of extreme trust towards Ah Chu. Ah Chu looked at Elder Tong and Zhuqiu Feng, who stood high above, and a ball of flames rose in her heart like a rocket that shot straight into her soul as she roared furiously. All right, watch me. She crossed her hands before her chest, and her neck swayed to the left and right, and it instantly emitted cracking sounds. An extremely dense battle intent surged without end. Ah Chu, who only had a foundation in the martial Dao, couldn't be as unrestrained as the others, and she only took an ordinary stride and charged before the soul-measuring origin stone. Instantly, it drew a wave of ridicule from the surroundings, but Ah Chu was clearly unmoved. Come! Ah Chu stood before the stone and gazed at the soul-measuring origin stone that was suffused with a divine radiance, and a vast and mighty light that coiled around her ceaselessly sprayed out. Ah Chu gradually closed her eyes. The soul in her mind gradually calmed down like a still lake. Ah Chu instantly felt that she was in a mysterious place, and endless scenes ceaselessly appeared before her eyes. Who are you people? Don't kill my grandmother. Ergo. Chapter 1619. In front of Ah Chu's eyes, scarlet blood filled the sky, and the surroundings were slowly filled with bloody aura. Many terrifying attacks were launched from the people from the Holy Mountain. The entire Li clan collapsed in an instant, and there were broken limbs and remains everywhere. The figures that she was familiar with all fell beside her and died with their eyes open. In a small corner, only she and her sister hugged each other tightly. Like sparrows, they trembled, and there was only despair and helplessness in their eyes. As more and more people came from the Holy Mountain, the entire air was filled with a bloody aura. This bloody scene left an indelible scar on the young Ah Chu and Li Shiran. Holy Mountain! Ah Chu, who was immersed in her soul, shouted in her heart. She clenched her fists and opened her eyes immediately. A bright light burst out, and her whole body was filled with incredible spatial fluctuations. I'm going to kill all the people from the Holy Mountain. Ah Chu roared in her heart. Suddenly, the light around Ah Chu surged, and her killing intent was monstrous. A moment later, her hand seals condensed slightly, and her whole body was wrapped in a mysterious five-colored divine light. She seemed to be immersed in a wonderful realm. As her hand seals changed, Ah Chu could feel the mysterious feeling that was constantly gathering in her body. It was something she had never felt before. At the same time, when Ah Chu was immersed, the energy of heaven and earth in the entire square and everyone's soul power seemed to be drawn, converging above Ah Chu's head. One by one, extremely thick dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky, and then an extremely powerful invisible force began to spread. The thick clouds seemed to be expanding and extending continuously. The dark clouds piled up in the sky, and the gloomy soul power shrouded everyone's head like a huge cover. Everyone present couldn't help but be shocked and dumbfounded. My soul power! What's going on? The disciples with lower cultivation kept waving their hands in shock. The clouds surged, bringing with them a terrifying ripple that surged into space, faintly overlapping. The next moment, visible to the naked eye, between the crisscrossing of wind and thunder, a sonorous roar swept through the world. The surrounding space collapsed inch by inch because of the immense soul power pressure. Pipa! The space continued to tremble. An absolutely powerful spiritual energy spread out from the soul measuring yuan stone. Immediately, an extremely thick lightning dragon came down from the cloud layer and smashed onto the white jade ground. Dust rose from the entire square. However, it only formed an extremely small crack line on the ground. It seemed that after 2 days of repairs, in order to prevent the plaza from being destroyed again, The experts of the palace had set up an extremely powerful protective mechanism in every part of the plaza. On the other hand, at this moment, Gyue, who was below the arena in the distance, seemed to have never expected that a Chu would actually have such an enormous reaction, and a trace of extraordinary splendor flashed in his eyes. On the high platform, Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, Cheng Gaoming, and all the other experts and elders had stood up successively, and they looked at a Chu with disbelief. Incredible! Incredible! Such a phenomenon was hard to come by even in 10 years. For the soul testing stone to have such a reaction, it must be because of this child's outstanding talent. The leader's eyes were full of excitement. What kind of background does this brat have to be able to make the Heavenly Palace's soul testing stone react like this? Where did Gyue find such a little monster? A tall and thin violet-clothed old man in Elder Wang's group nodded incessantly, and he looked at a Chu who was on the stage with admiration. Yin Lu, Guan Lan, and Yin Ding, who'd rushed over from the central prefecture, danced with joy in the group of elders. They knew a little about the Li clan, and they ceaselessly sent voice transmissions to Elder Gyue to report the good news. Even the inflexible Yozhou's old palace master, Murong Liang, praised him. This kid really is something. Palace Master Gyue, congratulations. Even though Gyue had already retired from the position of Palace Master for a very long time, the three Vice Palace Masters still couldn't help but address Gyue as Palace Master with reverence on their faces. Palace Master Gyue, congratulations. Congratulations. What we lost on the swings, we gained on the swings. Our efforts were not in vain. Elder Yin Lu's calm voice was filled with gratification. Elder Guanlan, on the other hand, was more direct. His round face was both happy and lonely. He said to Elder Gyue, "Alas, it's just a pity for Su Boy. Palace Master Gyue, a Chu's talent is really heaven-defying. You must cultivate him well in the future." Elder Gyue pondered for a moment and frowned. A Chu's soul quality was heaven grade, which was indeed very rare. This had been measured by Palace Master Duanmu. But generally speaking, a heaven-grade soul shouldn't have such a big impact on the soul testing stone. Looking at Chu in the dazzling five-colored light like a golden rainbow, Gyue was full of doubts. Chu looked like a little magical boy in the dazzling light. Following the pressure all over the sky, Elder Gyue's hand seals changed. A calm spatial ripple spread faintly from his palm and suddenly struck between a Chu's eyebrows. Immediately, a trace of Gyue's divine sense entered a Chu's soul like a spirit snake. As soon as it entered, Gyue couldn't help but feel speechless. Gyue immediately knew where a Chu's problem was. It turned out that a Chu had fallen into his own nightmare. In addition, his mood had been disturbed by others just now, so it was easy for him to erupt with energy that he had never had before. However, it was also very likely that he couldn't break free from the shackles of his spirit. Immediately, Gyue lowered his palms slightly with his palm facing down. A violent force came out of nowhere, followed by an extremely terrifying soul fluctuation that collided with the energy in a Chu's body. Under such a fluctuation, above the void, there was an explosion. Bang! The sound of the explosion came from the soul testing stone, and cracks like a spider web appeared on the stone. Five-colored light flowed out of the cracks, flowed along a Chu's meridians, and merged with a Chu's soul. Suddenly, a Chu woke up in an instant, and there was no longer any light in his eyes. The unparalleled momentum around him poured out like a monstrous wave. Wrapped in five-color divine light, a terrifying storm of power swept through the whole square like a heavy rain, deeply shocking everyone's heart. Thousands of personal disciples, experts, and elders of the Heavenly Command Palace present witnessed all this, and a chill spread from their hearts. After recovering his mind, a Chu's footsteps were a little shaky. His face was pale, but his expression was extremely excited, because a line of words was clearly written on the broken soul testing stone. Li Zhangchu, heaven grade soul quality, high first rank cultivation. Wow. Looking at a Chu's information, everyone was stunned. Everyone looked at the broken soul testing stone and shouted one after another. Chapter 16:20. What the hell? He's only at the first rank, yet he broke the soul measuring stone. What sort of trash are those at the third and fourth rank? Aya, is the soul measuring stone broken? If such a shocking scene is only at the first rank, then there's no need for us to compete. The person who spoke was an elder and personal disciple from Elder Wang's camp, and he spoke fiercely to the disciples that ridiculed Li Zhangchu. A Chu's shocking display allowed Elder Wang's camp to vent their anger. What did you say? Say it again. The disciples from Zhuoqiu Feng's camp refused to be outdone. Instantly, the entire square was clamorous without end, and only the people involved were extraordinarily calm. Gu Yue and Zhuoqiu Feng looked at each other from across the crowd, and their eyes were slowly filled with intense battle intent. A Chu seemed as if he'd awoken from a dream when he heard the clamorous noise in the surroundings. Only now did he notice that the extremely thick dark clouds in the heavens and the earth had already dispersed, and dazzling golden lights that were like divine lights shot onto the extremely sorry state high platform. Everything was so unnatural. The surroundings were filled with the smell of burning and electric shock. The high platform that was constructed from floating silverwood had become extremely unstable and was on the verge of collapse, and its edges had even started to crack. The entire high platform could be said to have been destroyed. I succeeded? A Chu still felt slight disbelief, yet he still wanted to quickly return to Gyue's camp. Bang! At the instant, a Chu's figure leaped down and turned around to walk towards Gyue. The soul measuring stone behind him scattered all over the ground like building blocks, and the soul measuring stone that had lost its luster was no different than an ordinary stone. Swish! The sound of shattering resounded, as if it tore apart the hearts of everyone present. A gloomy and oppressive voice resounded through the heavens and the earth behind a Chu, and it seemed to carry extreme rage as it spoke fiercely. Stop right there, kid. A Chu turned a deaf ear to it. When he heard that Zhuoqiu Feng was ordering him, his expression didn't change at all, and he continued walking towards Gyue and his older sister. The energy within Zhuoqiu Feng's entire body surged while his robe fluttered in the wind, and the strength of the mid-fifth rank soul instantly spread out. Instantly, the entire square was like a vacuum, and the air seemed to have frozen. Everyone felt as if their soul energy was being sucked out. They felt as if there was a terrifying force pulling them in. At the same time, Chu also felt the strange power. The meridians in her body and the soul in her mind began to fluctuate. Buzz! Ah Chu clenched his teeth and tried to resist. He tried his best to circulate his primordial qi, and the five-color divine light that he had just absorbed began to spread all over his body. The monstrous waves accompanied by his soul energy slightly weakened the energy in Ah Chu's heart. Dang, dang, dang. Under everyone's gaze, Ah Chu walked step by step toward Linghua Peak's team. Her clenched fists were so tight that her nails dug deep into her flesh. Blood dripped from her hands. It was a ghastly sight. Big Brother Su can do it. Ah Chu could do it too. Chu's eyes were firm and sharp, looking at the ground like a falcon. Gu Yue, Tian Wu, and the others were moved. Li Shiran's eyes were brimming with tears as she trembled slightly. Chu Yu. Li Shiran wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes when she saw her younger brother act so domineering and fearless, and she couldn't help but nod in encouragement. Just like before, Ah Chu was using his hot blood and extraordinary tenacity to walk step by step. The entire square instantly became extremely silent. After the storm, only the sound of Zhuoqiu Feng's energy could be heard. Zhuoqiu Feng watched as Chu remained unmoved, and the flames in his heart burned even brighter, while killing intent condensed in his eyes. In an instant, an even more enormous pressure descended from the sky, and the space instantly became heavy. Shit! The left palace master is furious. Cheng Gaoming and Wu Kuan were the closest, so they sensed Zhuoqiu Feng's aura. Obviously, Zhuoqiu Feng wanted to make an example out of them and cause trouble. Zwichio phone roared furiously like thunder from the nine heavens, and he said, "Kid, how dare you? I told you to stop." After that, terrifying energy surged out from Zwichio Feng's palm, and it shook the space to the point it ceaselessly emanated muffled bangs. The muffled bangs carried powerful energy as they whistled down, and then the entire square cracked from the pressure. Hiss! Hiss! At the instant the palm print collapsed, a tiger's roar pierced through space, and the remnant soul of the ancient bloodwing spider was drawn out. The extremely enormous remnant soul seemed like a living being that intended to pounce, and its ferocious eyes were suffused with a bloody glow as it sprayed out from the sky, causing a thick white-colored waterfall to blast fiercely towards Ah-Chu. Ah-Chu! Li Shiran's beautiful face turned pale. When she saw the waterfall was swift like a dragon, while white light resounded through the sky, Li Shiran intended to warn Ah-Chu, yet Ah-Chu was already too late to turn around. Swoosh! Swoosh! The waterfall tore through the air, and countless shocking sonic booms instantly resounded in the sky along the way. In the blink of an eye, two figures were like arrows that left the bow, and they carried extremely surging energy ripples as they swiftly arrived before Ah-Chu. A figure stopped before Ah-Chu, and it was Tianho. He ceaselessly waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, causing brilliant light to erupt from the sky, while the seals on his palm changed numerous times to form a barrier of origin energy. At the same time, he instantly retreated explosively with Ah-Chu. Ow! The entire space instantly fell into chaos, and everyone sensibly retreated to the side and watched the battle from the sidelines. Guyue's long sleeves fluttered while his silver long hair swept out like an iron brush and swept away the pressure that had condensed in the surroundings. Instantly, an energy explosion that was like a thunderclap resounded in the sky, and it shook the hearts and souls of everyone. Zwichio Feng, you shameless dog. You actually attacked a junior that has no cultivation at all. You're not worthy of being the substitute palace master of Heavenly Command Palace. Guyue's gaze raised while his furious roar was like an erupting volcano, and it was deafening. What a joke. If I'm not worthy, then could it be that you're worthy? Guyue, I've tolerated you for a long time, so don't take advantage of your seniority. You should know very well where this pair of siblings came from. What intentions do you harbor by bringing outsiders in? Zwichio Feng laughed coldly without end while the bloodwing spider before him still didn't slow down in the slightest, and Guyue didn't show any weakness as well. Strong winds surged, and his spiritual sense sensed that Tian Ho and the others were already far away, so he completely took up a stance. A monstrous vortex rose up from beneath his feet, and the vortex emanated dazzling light while accompanied by an extremely terrifying aura. After that, an ancient azure lightning celestial lion dashed out from behind him. The enormous beast image that filled the sky swung its claws through the air, and it dragged out a long afterimage while carrying an unparalleled and powerful soul pressure as it directly enveloped down towards the bloodwing spider's white light. Woo 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 bang! Bang! Sonic booms resounded as the two of them collided, causing the entire space to rumble and shake without end. At this instant, space was directly crushed into pieces while numerous enormous spatial rifts instantly formed, and the monstrous soul pressure transformed into a halo of light that dispersed. Chapter 16:21. At the same time, the ancient bloodwing spider flashed with an ominous glint. The wings on its back flapped, and the energy that filled the sky immediately surged out along with the sound waves. The extremely strange sound waves were like demonic sounds that poured into people's ears, directly creating a spatial rift in the space. Chi-Chi. As the bloodwing spider approached, sharp screeches that sounded like the howls of evil spirits from hell constantly rose from the blood-red light and pierced deeply into everyone's souls. It was extremely terrifying. My head hurts so much. Save me. My soul is out of control. It's so uncomfortable. Countless heavenly Rider Palace disciples were implicated and kept groaning on the ground while holding their heads. Many elders present grew in size and formed barriers or protective halos to resist Zhuo Feng's sound wave attack. Guanlan, Yin Lu, and Yun Ding held Tian Ho and the others firmly by their side with solemn expressions. They casually raised rays of light to isolate the sound waves and whispered to Tian Ho, "Chang'er, be careful." The same goes for the children. This sound wave attack is very powerful. The sound waves that filled the sky were like the whimpering of ghosts. The powerful attack was a great torture to the soul, and the damage was unimaginable. Even though they were protected by powerhouses, Ah Chu and Li Ran's faces were distorted and pale. They were about to fall as they held their heads and groaned in pain. Zhuo Feng, you disregarded the heavenly Rider Palace disciples and used such a vicious method in public. This old man will cripple you today, Gu Yue shouted. As soon as his voice fell, Gu Yue drew a mysterious arc in front of him, and his body shone brightly. The ancient blue thunder heavenly lion roared with its head held high, and its tyrannical aura surged to the extreme. Roar! Gu Yu shouted as the ancient blue thunder heavenly lion beast remnant soul behind him flashed with a dazzling light and waved its claws, causing a gust of wind to blow as Mi Tian charged towards the ancient bloodwing spider in a domineering and destructive manner. Rumble! The lion's roar shook the sky, and the vast soul energy tore the space apart. The two sound waves collided in the air, and the huge collision gave birth to an extremely violent sonic boom. In an instant, everyone's trembling soul calmed down. Bang bang! In the sky, the demonic aura that filled the sky along with the energy of heaven and earth spread out. In an instant, the two beasts confronted each other in the sky. The huge sonic boom resounded in the sky as the two demonic beasts' huge impact created boundless sound waves. Instantly, the entire square was filled with a huge, deep sound. In the sky filled with blood energy, the ancient blue thunder heavenly lion turned into light and dissipated, and the huge blood spider's huge tentacles also disappeared. The demonic aura that swept heaven and earth filled the square was extremely gloomy. Half of it was golden light and half. The extremely demonic scene shocked countless people present. The explosion caused ripples in space to spread out in all directions. Countless blades of wind and bolts of lightning caused Zhuo Feng and Gu Yu's robes to flutter. Countless people were able to feel the shocking pressure that was like a 1,000-year-old mountain pressing down on their hearts. This kind of battle between ancient remnant souls was rarely seen in one's life. Everyone opened their eyes wide, unwilling to miss it. They were so shocked that their mouths were wide open, and they were indescribably shocked. Palace Master Gu Yue, the three vice palace masters, shouted in a light voice. "Master, are you all right?" Tian Ho, Ling Yefeng, and the others who stood in the distance were extremely anxious, and their voices were grim. "No wonder you're so arrogant. Looks like your cultivation has improved recently." Gu Yue's brows raised as he shouted coldly, and boundless coldness spread from his eyes. On the other hand, Zhuo Feng was already in an extremely sorry state. Blood flowed from his claw, and he said coldly, "Do you have to ruin my plans at a time like this?" Zhuo Feng, you've been a substitute palace master for too long. You've really thought of yourself as a palace master. As soon as he finished speaking, coldness arose in Gu Yue's eyes because Zhuo Feng's combat strength had shocked him to the extreme. Looks like Zhuo Feng's forbearance all these years really didn't go to waste. Besides me, only the Supreme Elder can compare to such strength in the Command Palace, and it's sufficient to be ranked in the top 5. As for Palace Master Duanmu, he naturally couldn't compare to Zhuo Feng, and it was very likely that he'd already arrived at the peak of the 6 continents. Then, as the substitute Palace Master, I'll ask you a few questions. Where did these 2 little kids come from? Thump! Gu Yue instantly pondered deeply in his heart, while Tian Ho's expression was icy cold as well, and he said faintly, They're disciples sent over by my Central Continent branch. Do you have any objections? Oomph. Tell everyone who exactly they are. Are they disciples of the Central Continent branch? Or are they remnants of the Li clan? Zhuqiu Feng ceaselessly gasped for breath. As he gazed at Gyue, the corners of Zhuqiu Feng's mouth curled up into a faint smile. Zhuqiu Feng had already found out about their origins after they passed the test earlier. Now, he wanted to tell everyone that Gyue had concealed the truth. As soon as these words were spoken, Li Shiran and Achu were instantly stunned, and their bodies couldn't help but start trembling slightly. Earlier, Li Shiran had told Su Yi that the Li clan had always considered itself as the sole control sect. The Li clan had always looked down upon a sect like the Heavenly Drive Palace. Even if the Heavenly Drive Palace was an existence that couldn't be ignored in the continent, the Li clan had never taken it seriously. In terms of soul control techniques, the Li clan had always only acknowledged their own lineage. Sure enough, the crowd started to discuss animatedly and whisper to each other, and every single one of them was ceaselessly probing and asking questions. The Li clan? Which Li clan? I've never heard of it. What do you think? How many Li clans are there in the world? It's that arrogant Li clan in the Central Continent. No wonder the quality of their souls is so high. So they're the descendants of the Li clan. Alas, why didn't they stay in the Li clan and came here instead? Don't you know? The Li clan was annihilated. It was completely annihilated by the Holy Mountain overnight. Supposedly, it was for the sake of dealing with our Heavenly Drive Palace. Tears instantly gushed out from Li Shiran's eyes when she heard this, and everything of the past lingered in her heart once more. Achu became even angrier when he heard this. His thin and weak body stood in front of Li Shiran, and his eyes were like a snake's tongue. He looked around at the crowd and said, "Sister, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. No one can bully you. Don't talk nonsense. If you talk nonsense again, I'll tear your mouths apart." Achu kept roaring. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was extremely agitated. Achu! Li Shiran's tears kept falling, and they instantly stained her clothes and chest. In the face of everyone's condemnation and malicious words, the two siblings once again felt the coldness and warmth of the world. Immediately, Elder Gyue's chi swelled, and he shouted, "Shut up!" Boom! In an instant, a turbulent wave of chi instantly covered the entire void of the square. The space instantly trembled, and a terrifying energy came from all directions, quietly spreading with a huge pressure. Chapter 16:22. The spatial rift that silently transformed had forcefully torn open a rift in the space before him, and the enormous pressure it emanated instantly caused everyone to shut their mouths. Zhuqiu Feng, what's the meaning of this? What's wrong with my disciple? Gyue spoke furiously. Zhuqiu Feng grunted coldly, and then his gaze raised as he grinned. What's wrong? Firstly, the Li clan was annihilated indirectly because of my Central Prefecture's command palace. Su Yi offended the Divine Mountain, yet you've been protecting Su Yi at all times, so the Divine Mountain will point its finger at my command palace from now on. Everyone is clearly aware of the Li clan's death. You brought the descendants of the Li clan over with the intention of overturning my command palace. Secondly, Su Yi's origins are unknown, and it's another matter if the command technique he possesses is orthodox. You've saved him time and time again, so you can die if you want, but don't drag my command palace down with you. Thirdly, the Li clan has always been lofty, and my command palace isn't worthy of it. If you insist on allowing them to participate in the competition, then I'll expel you from command palace as well. These three reasons resounded like a bell in the hearts of everyone, and it instantly caused most of the members of command palace to nod incessantly. Yeah, we were originally a place of seclusion and cultivation, so would it be any better in the future if we brought these people in? Some disciples of command palace revealed worried expressions. On the other hand, some of the moderating faction amongst the elders started to interrupt. Elder Gyue, you didn't tell us all of this. If it's like this, then we'll definitely not allow these two kids to enter Command Palace. Don't make it difficult for us. Yeah. There are so many disciples in Command Palace from the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 ocean. Don't put everyone in such danger for the sake of 2 outsiders. The Li clan has always looked down upon us, so why should we do this for these people? Alas, Guanlan was furious instead, and his chubby figure said to the elders, "Elders, don't listen to Zhuqiu Feng's side of the story." Guyue laughed coldly in his heart as he watched Zhuqiu Feng's ability to shake the hearts of everyone with just a few words. Elder Guyue's brows gradually knit together when faced with the betrayal of some elders. Actually, Zhuqiu Feng's final words were his true objective, and he instantly roared with laughter as he spoke. Since when did the Imperial Heavenly Palace become so restrained that they are even afraid of the sacred mountain? My commanding Heavenly Palace is not a coward. Elder Guyue looked around, and his deep voice spread to every corner of the square. What's wrong? Did Heavenly Command Palace turn into cowards? The Li clan's disciples were exterminated. What's wrong with my command, Heavenly Palace, lending a helping hand? You've all seen for yourselves how talented the Li clan's disciples are. Sacred Mountain is bullying my Heavenly Command Palace, but you're just going to close your eyes and ignore it. In the end, Guyue turned around and pointed at Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and Chen Gaoming as he shouted furiously. Besides that, Zhuqiu Feng, when I entered the Imperial Heavenly Palace, I don't even know where you were. You don't have the qualifications to chase me out. Guyue, even now, you still don't know your mistake. Wu Kuan and Chen Gaoming pretended to be heartbroken. Yeah, Elder Guyue, the Imperial Heavenly Palace isn't targeting you, but it's really inappropriate for you to suddenly bring 3 outsiders in. I think you should reconsider. Chen Gaoming even fanned the flames and sowed discord with his words. Zhuqiu Feng took over and said loudly, Guyue, the Imperial Heavenly Palace isn't a place for you to show off your qualifications. Everyone has their own opinions. Ling Yufeng, please withdraw from the Imperial Heavenly Soul competition today. These 2 disciples aren't members of the Imperial Heavenly Palace anymore. My Imperial Heavenly Palace doesn't accept people of unknown origins. In the end, the corners of Zhuqiu Feng's mouth revealed a faint smile that was extremely savage, and he said, "As for Su Yi, this trespasser, it's fine if the Palace Master has already executed him. But if he hasn't, my Imperial Heavenly Palace will definitely imprison him and ask him about his origins. We'll seize his cultivation and avoid calamity." How dare you? Everyone from Ling Yufeng roared furiously. Boom! In an instant, there was a hubbub of voices as everyone loudly reprimanded Guyue. In the end, they formed a unified slogan. Expel the outsider and guard the Imperial Heavenly Palace. Expel the outsider and guard the Imperial Heavenly Palace. The unified slogan was imposing, and its momentum was terrifying. It hit Ling Yufeng and the 3 Vice Palace Masters like a wave. Some people who were originally on the same side as Guyue, the Palace Master's faction, gathered together and walked to Palace Master Guyue's side as they whispered to him. Palace Master Guyue, what should we do? Zhuqiu Feng has started the momentum. If we continue to ignore it, there might be a huge change in the Imperial Heavenly Palace today before the Palace Master arrives. Guyue pondered for a moment. He knew that all these were just excuses for Zhuqiu Feng to usurp the Palace Master's position. He was the last spark of the Palace Master's faction. He had to hold on until the Palace Master arrived. Palace Master, little Su, come quickly. Guyue's heart was filled with worry. In the face of such a complicated situation, Li Shiran and Chu appeared to be at a loss. Large beads of sweat dripped down their faces. Tian Wu stood at the side and comforted them softly. Li Shiran bit her lips and took a deep breath. She led Chu through the crowd and bowed deeply to Elder Guyue. Thud, thud, thud. 3 extremely heavy kowtows were like heavy hammers that struck the hearts of Guyue and the Palace Master's faction present. Li Shiran's eyes were already filled with tears. The 2 siblings were born at the wrong time and met with such a tragic fate. At this moment, they encountered such a change in the imperial heavenly palace. Their hearts instantly turned cold, and they lost all hope. Master, Achu, and I didn't expect to bring you such a big trouble. A master for a day, a father for life. Achu, and I will never let you become anyone's vassal. Guyue shook his head heavily and sighed. Ranner, you don't have to do this. Li Shiran was like a pear blossom in the rain. Her sad smile was extremely desperate. She turned her head to Achu. Her eyes were full of tears. She smiled and said, Achu, I don't want to stay here anymore. Let's go home. Suddenly, all the onlookers were a little suspicious. Weren't they all exterminated? How could they still have a home? Achu nodded heavily. His eyes were full of fire. His aura was as hot as a man on fire. He said to Elder Guyue, Master, the friendship in this life, we will return it in the next life. If Brother Su comes back, tell him that I, Achu, will be his little brother in the next life. At first, after listening to Li Shiran's words, Guyue's silent heart was already filled with boundless waves. But Achu's words suddenly resounded through the sky like a thunderclap. His weathered face suddenly changed. Li Shiran and Achu both channeled light from their palms and slashed at their hearts fiercely. Ranner, Chua, don't. Guyue's eyes were about to burst as he shouted in his heart. Everyone present held their breath for a moment. They really didn't expect that two young people would choose to sacrifice themselves for Guyue and the Imperial Heavenly Palace. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 16:23. You can't. Junior brother, junior sister. Tian Wu's eyes seemed to fall to the ground as he shouted. However, everything happened in a flash. Everything happened too fast. The two were some distance away from Guyue, and Guyue could only choose to save one of them. Guyue immediately operated the Yuan Qi in his hand and roared. A fingerprint shot out from a distance, and the incomparably swift soul attack surged out unreservedly. Suddenly, Achu's arm was knocked aside by the Yuan Qi. Achu's body was filled with a terrifying aura of an expert, and a huge power poured into her meridians from between her eyebrows. At this moment, Achu collapsed to the ground and trembled all over. Then, her eyes began to glaze over. Sister, Achu, who was rescued, immediately woke up and looked at Li Shiran. Bang! At this time, when Li Shiran's hand were already placed on her heart, a golden Yuan Qi lightning instantly rushed over from the horizon, like a white python, circling around Li Shiran's body. Sister, sister. Seeing that her sister did not die, Achu was relieved and quickly crawled to her sister, only to find that she had fainted. The electric light around her body was like an electric shock. Achu was hit far away, and tears suddenly flowed down from her eyes. Save my sister! Save my sister! Who is it? Everyone's eyes turned to the horizon in an instant. With such rapid strength and precision, and with such perfect hiding of aura, it was definitely not an ordinary person. It must be an expert among experts. Ha ha! In the sky above Jutian Palace, a deep and powerful voice suddenly resounded. Following the voice, 5 people were seen standing in the sky. The leader of the group was about 2 meters tall. He was dressed in a blue satin brocade robe. His bright and deep eyes were filled with maturity and depth. His black hair was combed neatly. His hair was tightly plastered to his head, showing the order of a man. His bulging muscles were well-defined. When looked at from afar, he was born with an unrestrained and dignified appearance, and he faintly gave off an otherworldly feeling. However, the piercingly cold, killing intent between his brows was incompatible with his robust and burly appearance, and his entire body emitted the peerless aura of a superior. The woman standing at the side also had an extraordinary bearing. Her pair of slender and beautiful legs matched with a tight short brocade dress made her look very valiant and heroic. Her fiery heat revealed an incomparable sexiness, and a unique charm of a young girl arose spontaneously. Limitless sect, Han Wulong. Everyone's eyes instantly froze, and their hair began to stand on end. Zhuqiu Feng, Guyue, and all the other members of the Heavenly Drive Palace looked up into the sky in unison. The person who'd arrived was the master of the Infinite Sect, the person at the helm of the greatest power in Cloud Prefecture, Han Wulong. The young girl beside him was Han Yuro, the one who had left earlier to call for reinforcements. Han Yuro's crescent brows were tightly knitted together, and she was extremely anxious. Guyue shook his head slightly and said softly, "I'm afraid the Imperial Soul Race will be even more chaotic now. If Palace Master Duanmu doesn't come, then the situation will be difficult to control. Master, Han Wulong is a renowned troublemaker. He hasn't come out for many years because of the Palace Master. He's probably come with ill intentions today." Tian Ho spoke from the side. "You're still talking. You shouldn't have allowed Miss Han to leave at that time. Based on the situation, little girl Han has surely gone to look for her father." Guyue spoke with a smile. Guyue thought about it. There can be no construction without destruction. Perhaps this fellow will be able to completely shatter Zhuqiu Feng's dream of becoming the Palace Master. On the other side, Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and the others were extremely anxious, and their expressions were extremely gloomy. Victory was already within their grasp, and the overall situation was already decided, yet they never expected that new problems would crop up and another person that was difficult to deal with would arrive. "Father, why did you exert so much strength just now? Miss Ran has already fainted." Han Yuro instantly shouted loudly towards the ground below, and she stomped her feet lightly without stopping. "Little girl, baby Ruru, father had no choice. She was too far away. It's already not bad that she was saved. Oomph. Father, you're really not reliable at all. You're always like this when you're just doing something." Han Yuro crossed her arms and turned around. It was useless no matter how Han Wulong explained. "My dear daughter, when you asked father to come to the Imperial Palace, did I come immediately? Father hasn't gone out for so many years, so don't be angry. If your mother knew that I went so far away, she would definitely be angry. All right, give me a bottle of good medicinal pills. Miss Ran must be severely injured. I have to hurry and save her." Han Wulong's breathing was heavy, and he shook his head as he fumbled around in his pocket for a long time. In the end, he took out a bottle of medicinal pills from his pocket and said with difficulty to Han Yuro, "This is a mid-grade profound grade medicinal pill, and there are 3 pills in it. Father treasures it. You only need to feed a third of it to that little girl. Any more, and she'll explode and die." "All right, got it." Han Yuro instantly snatched the bottle and tossed it to Tian Ho. Behind her, Han Wulong's face twitched, and he had a pained expression. However, he was afraid that Han Yuro would be angry, so he said gently, "Slow down, use it sparingly. Senior brother Tian Ho, take it, quickly feed it to Miss Ran." Boom! Tian Ho received the medicinal pills, and immediately an unparalleled medicinal aura swept over him. He felt as if he had been enlightened, and traces of medicinal aura lingered around him. Han Wulong couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was said that Han Wulong loved his daughter as much as his life. Heaven-grade medicinal pills only existed in legends, and Earth-grade medicinal pills were rare in the world. Only mystic-grade medicinal pills were the most precious, and there weren't many of them. With just one sentence, Han Wulong was willing to take out mystic-grade medicinal pills to treat an unrelated person. It was obvious how much he doted on Han Yuro. "Kid, you'd better save some for me and return the rest to Roer. Otherwise, I'll break your legs," Han Wulong said fiercely to Tian Ho. The sound wave was like thunder, and it smashed onto Tian Ho's body. As the space was torn apart, a destructive energy spread out. Too strong. His cultivation is at the origin ancestor realm. Everyone present couldn't help but open their mouths wide. Han Wulong looked like he was in his 40s, but he was so strong. Guyue quietly dispersed the pressure on Tian Ho's body. He shook his head and said with a smile, "We'll accept Sect Master Han's kindness. Chong, quickly go and see how Ran is doing." "Okay," Tian Ho responded. He moved like the wind, crouched down and fed the medicinal pills into Li Shiran's mouth. At the same time, he channeled his vitality to repair Li Shiran's meridians. At the same time, he said to Ah Chu, "Fortunately, Sect Master Han treated her in time. Otherwise, even the best medicinal pills would be useless." Gu Yue cupped his fists at Han Wulong in the sky and said, "You, the little dragon, have now become a big dragon that can overturn rivers and seas. How have you been, Sect Master Han? Today, you saved my disciple again. I owe you a favor. I owe my medicinal pills." Sigh. Han Wulong stepped on his profound handle, ignoring the situation below. He kept crying as he watched Tian Ho treat Li Shiran, afraid that he would feed her too many medicinal pills. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1624. On the other hand, Han Yuro's face was full of disdain. She didn't want to talk and said in a low voice, "I don't know if begging you is reliable or not. Isn't it just a pill? It's all because your mother is too strict." Sigh. Everyone will stumble. Han Wulong said bitterly. Han Wulong had always been an unreliable person in Han Yuro's heart. Originally, Han Wulong had been tolerating the Heavenly Palace for many years, and Han Yuro couldn't stand it. This time, Han Yuro came out on her own to participate in the Heavenly Palace Old competition and gave Han Wulong a big fright. Han Yuro suddenly came back to beg for mercy, and Han Wulong agreed to bring Han Yuro along and participate in the Heavenly Palace Soul competition personally. Han Wulong, who was still immersed in the pain, didn't care about the reactions of the people around him. The people behind him seemed to be used to Han Wulong and Han Yuro's way of communicating and didn't have much of a reaction. Instead, many people in the crowd laughed softly. Cough, cough. An expert behind him came forward and glanced at Gu Yue. He said softly, "Sect Master, Elder Gu Yue is talking to you." Only then did Han Wulong raise his head. Seeing Gu Yu smiling at him, Han Wulong put on a solemn expression and spoke in a low, booming voice. "Elder Gu Yu, Xiaolong is here to greet you. I've always wanted to come, but your Duanmu girl, cough cough, Palace Master Duanmu is here, so I won't disturb you." This sentence hid a lot of information. It turned out that Gu Yue and Han Wulong had a good relationship, and Han Wulong was very afraid of Palace Master Duanmu. "But today, I'm also an uninvited guest. Will Heavenly Palace not welcome me?" Han Wulong laughed loudly and said with an extraordinary aura, It's fine as long as Sect Master Han still remembers this old man," Gu Yue said with a smile. Han Wulong's aura changed greatly. His majestic muscles bulged like a bull, but his eyes were like torches as he said, "Today I was asked by my daughter to come to Heavenly Palace. Heavenly Palace has always been united. I didn't expect to see such a lively scene. However, if Palace Master Duanmu was here, things wouldn't have turned out this way." Han Wulong trembled slightly at the mention of Palace Master Duanmu. Tian Wu asked softly, "What is the relationship between Sect Master Han and our Sect Master?" Gu Yue smiled and said in a low voice, "Loser." Soon after, Han Wulong said to Gu Yue, "Oh right, is Master Gu Yue in charge of Yuqian Palace now? I have a favor to ask of you." Gu Yue waved his hand and said to Zhuqiu Feng, "Sect Master Zhua is our acting palace master now. I'm just an idle person." "You." Zhuqiu Feng immediately stood up. Zhuqiu Feng had heard of Han Wulong's great name. Han Wulong was one of the two outstanding geniuses of the Cloud Prefecture back then, and he was already at the 6th level of Origin Ancestor at such a young age. Earlier, Zhuqiu Feng had once heavily injured Han Yuro, so he was afraid that Han Wulong had come to take revenge. So his hairs instantly stood on end while his eyes were filled with a serious expression. "You're the acting palace master?" Han Wulong spoke indifferently, while a strand of peerless energy erupted with a bang. Zhuqiu Feng's eyes twitched, and he said in a low voice, "I'm Zhuqiu Feng of Yuqian Palace. Greetings, Sect Master Han. Father, it's this old geezer and the two old geezers by his side who beat up my daughter. They even heavily injured that old geezer as well." As soon as she finished speaking, Han Yuro's face flushed red. Thump! Zhuqiu Feng was instantly drenched in sweat, and he hurriedly explained. Miss Han, it's all a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. On the other hand, Han Wulong's figure instantly approached, while all the experts behind him followed behind him. He was like a golden pillar of lightning that smashed onto the platform like an enormous golden dragon. Bang! The sky instantly dimmed down under these attacks, and a strand of domineering and destructive energy smashed onto the square like a cannonball, causing waves of energy to instantly spread out in a semicircle. Everyone present was instantly extremely astounded, and they circulated their energy to resist the terrifying and formidable aura. Han Wulong was like a god of slaughter, and it formed a clear contrast with the gentle image he had before Han Euro. On the other hand, Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and the others that retreated explosively were in an extremely sorry state, and their eyes were filled with terror as they spoke in their hearts. He's only a middle-aged man, yet he actually possesses such a cultivation. Moreover, his cultivation aura is peerlessly domineering and formidable. How do all of you want to die? Choose for yourselves. Han Wulong spoke indifferently while boundless killing intent surged out from him. Zhuqiu Feng was extremely embarrassed. The immeasurable sect was an existence on par with the hallowed mountain, so offending the immeasurable sect was equivalent to offending the entire Cloud Prefecture. As the acting palace master, he absolutely couldn't make such a formidable enemy. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Han Wulong directly stomped his foot, and then spiderweb-like cracks instantly started to appear on the platform that had been strengthened by experts as he spoke furiously. Misunderstanding my ass. My precious daughter was beaten up by all of you. Who beat her up? Decide for yourself, so as to avoid dirtying my hands. The fiendish Han Wulong poured flames of fury and his aura directly into the three palace masters. The three of them instantly felt their hair stand on end, and they didn't dare to speak. Meanwhile, everyone in the square was awkwardly watching Han Wulong make things difficult for the three palace masters. On the contrary, Ling Yefeng had a relaxed expression on his face as he watched Zhuqiu Feng suffer setback. He was extremely happy. Sect Master Han, aren't you being too domineering by acting like this without listening to our explanation? Zhuqiu Feng couldn't get out of the embarrassing situation, and he was instantly filled with anger. Yes, Sect Master Han, we can sit down and resolve any misunderstanding. Even though our standpoints are different, it doesn't mean that there's no possibility of reconciliation. Wu Kuan had a face full of smiles. The three vice palace masters all had cultivations above the 5th stage. If they fought head-on, it wasn't that they couldn't defeat them, but it would cause the imperial palace to suffer an unexpected calamity. I'm domineering? Who's domineering when they beat up my daughter? Who's domineering when they forced these two children to seek death? Han Wulong shouted in a deep voice, and the space domain in front of him immediately opened. A faint golden light filled the air, and a soaring dragon's roar swept out, causing everyone's heart and soul to tremble. What a powerful spiritual domain! The spectators exclaimed in their hearts, and then the space before them started to explode. The sound shook the sky, and a shapeless force covered the heavens and the earth as it surged out explosively from the rift. Amidst the turbulence in space, a peerlessly domineering and destructive force was released. Hiss! Elder Guyue's eyes narrowed. He could sense from the aura that Han Wulong's strength couldn't be compared to before, and he said slowly in his heart, "This is a dual domain of spiritual domain and attack." Guanlan and Lu and the others nodded repeatedly, and they circulated their energy to protect their minds as they said in a low voice, "There's actually such a genius in the world that's able to cultivate such a powerful martial skill. No wonder he's always looked down on our imperial palace. If Sect Master Han wants to be a sole controller, then he'll definitely be above us." How could Zhuqiu Feng not know the formidableness of Han Wulong's domain technique? His face twitched as he said fiercely, "Since it's like that, then the imperial palace isn't afraid. Sect Master Han, please enlighten me." Clang! Clang, clang. Tri-origin pagoda formation. Zhuqiu Feng's soul energy spread out madly as he spoke loudly. Chapter 1625. With Zhuqiu Feng's furious roar, Wu Kuan and Cheng Gaoming stood on either side of him and shouted loudly. The three of them raised their palms above their heads at the same time. In an instant, three fist-sized rays of light gushed out from the top of their heads. Violent energy accompanied by boundless power stunned everyone. This energy was too terrifying. It was as if their hearts would stop just by looking at it. Han Wulong narrowed his eyes and crossed his arms. His neatly combed hair fluttered high from the violent energy. Facing such terrifying energy, an incomparably surging, killing intent gushed out from his entire body. Looking at Han Wulong, who stood in a neat formation, Han Wulong's body fluttered vigorously, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. His brocade robe fluttered backward, and the tip of his foot lightly tapped backward. Instantly, the golden dragon roar around him filled the sky, and an incomparably dazzling golden light shot into the sky like a sharp sword. Roar! The roar of the dragon, coupled with his tall and sturdy figure, gave off an imposing aura. A trace of disdain appeared in Han Wulong's eyes, and a cold intent shot out. At this moment, his entire body was suffused with an intense battle intent that couldn't be dispersed. Contempt appeared in the eyes of the boundless sex experts behind him, and three of them roared loudly, "Sect Master, I'll help you." "Ha ha!" Han Wulong waved his huge hand behind him. His brows were like mountains, and he looked extraordinarily mighty. Golden lightning dragon patterns that seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth appeared like a monstrous war god. He didn't look like a slave to his daughter at all. "Good. I don't need your help. The three-origin pagoda formation is really something. Let me experience it." After he finished speaking, his voice filled the sky and reverberated in the empty plaza. "Row, take a good look at how your father beats up these three old men. The Yuqian Palace is nothing more than this." "Ha ha!" Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Han Wulong's energy erupted, and everyone stepped back. Han Wulong's footsteps were light as he leaped high into the sky like a rocket, and he looked down from above. Zhuqiu Feng had endured it time and time again, but there was no need for him to endure it anymore. Facing Han Wulong's repeated taunts, Zhuqiu Feng's face was already gloomy to the extreme, and he said gloomily, "F***CKU. Han Wulong, do you really think I'm afraid of you?" At this moment, facing Han Wulong, who was high up in the sky, he cursed loudly without any regard for his image. "Let's see who's number one in Cloud Prefecture, the Immeasurable Gate or the Heavenly Palace. Little bastard, this old man will destroy your dragon might today." Zhuqiu Feng's vulgar actions caused everyone to be flabbergasted, and they were shocked in their hearts. A world-shaking battle was bound to occur next, so they were instantly stunned on the spot by the powerful, imposing aura before them, and they were extremely flustered. On the side, Guanlon, Yin Lu, and the others had solemn expressions. They pulled Tian Wu, Han Yuro, Li Shiran, and the others to the side. A battle between masters like this wasn't something they could withstand. If things went wrong, they might even be seriously injured. Yin Ding hurried to Guyue's side and said in a low voice, "Palace Master Guyue, what should we do? If they were to really fight, this Zhongxin front peak would definitely suffer great destruction. You must organize it." Guyue made a prompt decision and ordered the three vice palace masters. His voice was as powerful as a bell as it filled the heavens and the earth, and everyone immediately understood. "All elder dukes, teaching elder, and elder commander, take all the disciples under the tree and retreat. Open the barrier and protect the heavenly palace." "Who do you think you are to give orders here?" Elder Tong, whose head was swollen like a pig, cursed from afar when he heard this. On the other hand, the other elders had solemn expressions and felt that it was reasonable. No one paid any attention to Elder Tong, and only the leading elders said, "Idiot! If you want to die, I won't stop you." After he finished speaking, The square scattered like birds and beasts. A stream of light tore through the sky from the horizon, and then the entire world was illuminated resplendently like a multicolored sunset. Today's Heavenly Palace Soul Tournament was definitely not going to be held. If they really fought and destroyed the Zhongjin front peak, no one would be able to bear the blame when the palace master blamed them. Elder Tong's eyes were empty and lifeless after being scolded by the leading elder. Like a wooden fish, he gritted his teeth and flew into the distance. Trash, don't run. Han Yuro looked at Elder Tong with a round shield and laughed loudly. Her eyes were filled with disdain, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Some of the more cowardly ones directly led their disciples in the direction of Archkay Lake and no longer cared about the front peak. This made Guyue and the others shake their heads. There were always some people in the Heavenly Palace who changed sides at the last minute. Some of the braver ones who stuck to their bottom line, such as the thin and tall elder, just now, flew into the air and spoke to Guyue with bright eyes. Guyue, I'm here. If there's anything, just tell me. I'll definitely support you. Guyue laughed loudly and looked around at the people in front of him. He stroked his beard and said, I appreciate it. I'll go to Yuzhou in the next Tianfeng battle. Let's have a good drink and chat. In an instant, the entire square was empty. Only Ling Yefeng's group, the three Central Prefecture's vice palace masters, Han Wulong and Zhuqiu Feng, who were prepared to fight, and some battle fanatics that were scattered all over the square remained. They watched from afar and didn't activate the barrier. Bang! Flying in the air, Han Wulong's entire body was bursting with energy. The space around him rippled, and the dragon scale patterns on his back were faintly discernible. His huge body roared furiously. Three old fogies. Apologize to my row. Bang! All of a sudden, the white lightning dragon circling around its body transformed into a majestic dragon-shaped golden light. It looked up, and in the next second, the enormous golden dragon twisted its golden light across the universe and charged toward the three of them. Han Wulong was like a ferocious tiger coming down from a mountain. The golden dragon was like the apocalypse. The destructive and overbearing aura shook the entire space open. In the midst of the ferocity, the three of them quickly adjusted their aura to the maximum. Triple Yang Limitless Technique. Take it. The three circular golden light shields immediately converged into a huge golden shield. It rose high above their heads, and an earth-shattering soul energy surged out. The combined power of the three was extremely powerful. It was like a turbulent wave as it crazily collided with the golden dragon that was flying down from the void. Rumble, the figures of the people in the distance swayed. Guyue, who had already led the group to retreat, was shocked. The three Origin Pagoda array took the number of three and combined the soul energy of the three people into one. The soul energy was 9 times stronger than the soul energy of one person. Such a heaven-defying soul formation wasn't something an ordinary cultivator could block by himself. This little dragon is actually not at a disadvantage against the three of them. His growth in these years is too shocking. Guyue narrowed his eyes and kept nodding as he talked. Whoosh! In the next moment, the space trembled. The golden light of the three shields rose continuously like the sun. The light became more and more dazzling, and the temperature rose. Boundless spatial ripples appeared out of thin air. When it expanded to the maximum, the golden light shield shot out. Chapter 16:26. On the other hand, the golden dragon high above raised its head towards the sky, and terrifying energy effused out from within it. The space in the surroundings collapsed inch by inch, and then it swallowed the three golden lights at a terrifying speed. At this moment, Han Wulong roared with all his might. Fight! Swallow them all! Han Wulong roared furiously, and his surging battle intent was sharp like a blade and extremely swift and fierce. Ow! The golden dragon howled to the sky, extremely ferocious. Along with the golden dragon swallowing the golden light, Han Wulong's figure suddenly smashed down, and light surged between his hands as he clenched his fist that surged with all his strength. While bright lights shot out, a fist light shot out explosively from the center of his fist once more, and it smashed down successively towards the three people below him. It blasted explosively onto the shoulders of Zhuoqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and the others with extreme precision. Bang! 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 The golden shield was forced back and ceaselessly smashed down like cannons from the heavens, causing their expressions to turn grim. Unexpectedly, Han Wulong's speed was like a ghost, and their shoulders sank down while their bodies crashed to the ground. When they were about to get up again, Han Wulong's absolute domain had already seized this opportunity to activate. Whem! Whem! Suddenly, they fell into this entire space, causing them to tremble while their minds were shaken from being attacked. It was as if they'd seen an indescribably ferocious and monstrous dragon with a bloody mouth and ferocious eyes that emitted glows directly pounce towards them. Within the pitch-black and nameless space, the golden dragon soared while extremely dazzling golden light covered the sky, and it illuminated everyone's eyes and bodies to the point it hurt. It was like a pressure that traversed the ancient heavens and the earth, and it instantly pressed the three of them tightly onto the ground and didn't dare raise their heads. Father! Awesome! Han Yuro ceaselessly clapped when she saw Han Wulong succeed with a single strike, and she was extremely overjoyed. The little dragon's spatial ability is too formidable. It sees the opportunity to suppress the three of them, but it looks like it won't be able to hold on for long. A bright light flashed within Guyue's eyes as he pondered briefly before he spoke. Exactly. Even though this little golden dragon is extremely rough, it's extremely meticulous. Fight speed with speed. Fight violence with violence. The only difference between the members of the Drive Palace and him is their actual combat ability. The tall old man in the distance grinned as he spoke, and he nodded repeatedly while his eyes were filled with praise. Hoo-hoo! Han Wulong continued to circulate his yuan qi. The golden light around his body was like a tidal wave as it slapped on the bodies of the three people. At the same time, large beads of sweat flowed down from his chin. His complexion was slightly pale, as if it was extremely strenuous for him. Rower, come here. Father made the meal to you. Whichever one of them hits you, you can kick them as you wish. Han Wulong's face was slightly pale. His yuan qi was rapidly flowing out of his body like water. One could feel that Han Wulong's aura was rapidly depleting. Han Yuro kept nodding as she looked at the three old ghosts. She stepped lightly on the ground and quickly approached them. She smiled and said, Good. Father, you're amazing. These three old fogies are no match for him. Guyue stopped Han Yuro and said in a low voice, Miss Han, don't go. Danger. On the other hand, Zhuoqiu Feng and the others were suppressed to the point their faces turned red while their eyes were filled with frost, and their hearts were filled with hatred towards Han Wulong as they gritted their teeth and spoke. Han Wulong, you're far from attaining mastery in this golden dragon spatial technique. What's the use of suppressing us for now? Once we get up, it'll be the time of your death. Wu Kuan and Cheng Gaoming's faces were filled with killing intent as well. They were mighty and unyielding, and they would rather die than submit. They grunted and said, I don't believe you dare go against our heavenly command palace. Ha ha ha. The corners of Han Wulong's mouth curled up as he said coldly, Even though I haven't attained mastery, it's already enough. It's more than enough to kill all of you. Presumptuous. How dare you? The three of them shouted explosively at the same time, and they were unable to restrain their rage as they glared fiercely at Han Wulong. Bang! Bang! Under their gazes, bright lights shot out from Han Wulong's eyes as his right palm slammed out, and it was like a bolt of lightning that instantly pressed down their heads. Didn't all of you say that all of you were number one in Cloud Prefecture? All of you are nothing without Duanmu. Bang! 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 As his palm descended, the sharp fist lights directly blasted open a small, deep hole on the white jade floor before them, and the three of them just happened to be facing Han Yuro. It was like they were kowtowing. Instantly, The three of them saw stars before their eyes as blood flowed, and an enormous bump instantly swelled up on their foreheads. The bright lights that shot out explosively from their eyes had already dimmed down, and the energy in their bodies was extremely weak. The intense pain caused the three of them to ceaselessly emit cries of pain that resounded through the world. Han Wulong locked his aura tightly onto the three of them, causing them to be unable to move, whereas the golden dragon coiled its enormous tail and directly coiled around the three of them from their necks to their torsos, and it grew tighter and tighter, like a python coiling around their bodies. Hiss! Hiss! The sound of their clothes being torn apart by the dragon scales caused everyone to tremble, and the golden dragon's enormous tail swung madly as the extremely sharp dragon scales pierced into their bodies like blades. Blood and flesh instantly dripped, and ghastly white bones could still be seen amidst the mangled flesh and bones. Pain! Han! Wulong! I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Zhuo Qiufeng's eyes bulged out, and his aura was already extremely weak. Endless blood gurgled out from his body, and it was extremely bloody. Let me go if you dare. Compete in soul techniques with me if you dare. Wu Kuan shouted madly like a demon. Bang! We'll talk about it in your next life. You're no longer part of the heavenly command palace from now on. Han Wulong's killing intent instantly erupted, and the terrifying golden dragon's energy fluctuated. The enormous golden tail swung over once more, and it swayed in an extremely strange arc in the horizon, and it was about to instantly arrive before the three of them. Hiss! Suddenly, before the enormous tail's radiance reached the three of them, a pitch-black spatial rift that was like a tear mark opened up far away in the sky. Instantly, the golden dragon's divine light was covered by the rift, and it disappeared like water vapor rising into the air. The rift was like a black hole, and the golden dragon's energy on Han Wulong's body was nibbled away bit by bit. When Han Wulong circulated his vitality once more, the enormous force within the rift poured out like a torrent. In an instant, a wisp of paleness appeared on Han Wulong's face, and he finally couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood from his chest, and his figure was directly blasted back by over 100 meters. Owl! The golden dragon dissipated, and the sky rumbled. The resplendent golden light dissipated like fragments, and the vitality on Han Wulong's body formed a hollow circle and blasted out in all directions. The incomparably terrifying spatial energy caused the surrounding space to split open into countless tiny rifts. Han Wulong's expression changed rapidly, and while retreating in the air, he repeatedly changed several times. His figure twisted, and the light suddenly changed. He hurriedly withdrew his vitality and raised a protective light barrier, and his eyes that looked at the rift were filled with astonishment. On the other hand, the eyes of Gyue and all the remaining elders were filled with shock, and their bodies couldn't help but tremble because of the spatial changes. "It's her," Gyue exclaimed in his heart. "It's her." Han Wulong was also slightly absent-minded, and he pulled Han Yuro, who quickly rushed to his side and muttered with concern. "Father, are you all right? Who is it?" Han Yuro gasped for breath and was slightly puzzled. Chapter 16:27. Han Wulong hadn't said anything since the beginning. Han Yuro followed his gaze and saw a jade-white figure that was like a dream walk out slowly from within the tear-stained space. The woman's figure swayed with every step she took. Her appearance was purer than snow, pure like jade, and when the sunlight descended on her face, it was a peerlessly beautiful and pure appearance. Swish! The deep and pitch-black space that was filled with lightning gradually dispersed, and as soon as the beautiful figure that was like a celestial maiden walked out, everyone revealed expressions of shock and disbelief. There's actually such a beautiful appearance in the world. As women, Li Shiran and Han Yuro exclaimed with admiration in their hearts at the same time, let alone all the male cultivators present here. Amidst their exclaiming gazes, The eyes of every single one of them reflected a peerlessly beautiful woman with an extremely perfect figure. With a raise of her delicate hand, her skin that was white like jade glistened under the golden light, and a strand of light and beautiful hair fluttered between the ripples of green. Her appearance was delicate and beautiful, and between her perfect nose was a pair of watery eyes that were capable of taking one's breath away, whereas her high nose bridge and slightly puckered red lips revealed a trace of a dangerous aura. She was beautiful and cold, yet slightly awe-inspiring, peerlessly proud, and without the slightest expression, and she was like a delicate beauty that was otherworldly. Her jet black hair was tied up high into a princess bun. Her brows were slender and picturesque, and they flickered like stars. She looked to be around the age of 20, yet the aura she emanated caused others to feel as if they'd fallen into the river of time, and a single gaze from her would cause others to be unable to extricate themselves from her. Her snow-white skin matched with a flawless snow-white robe. From top to bottom, her perfectly round twin peaks were endlessly plump, and further down were her faintly discernible slender and beautiful legs. Even though they were hidden under the white robe, one could still imagine her slender waist. In a split second, it was enough to make everyone's hearts soar and their emotions quicken. Gulp! The sound of male cultivators swallowing their saliva resounded throughout the surroundings, and then when they looked at Zhuqiu Feng, Han Wulong, and the others, how could they still be bothered about fighting? Their gazes seemed to have frozen as they stared fixedly at this peerless beauty that came from a painting. Who is she? How could she be so beautiful? Han Yuro spoke in a light voice because such a beauty was truly rare. Han Wulong shook his head absent-mindedly and said softly, I don't know. I hope it's not her. But it seems like it is, and it also seems like it isn't. But why is it getting more and more beautiful? Han Yuro looked at Han Wulong in confusion. Her father, who had always been brilliant and extraordinary, had actually lost his composure like this. He was like an admirer who had fallen into the dust. Han Yuro looked at him in a daze for a moment. Father, what's going on? It's not like you can't move when you see a beauty, right? Han Yuro said softly. Guyue also shook his head for a moment and sighed in his heart. No wonder the palace master didn't come out casually for the past 2 years. She's getting younger every year. With such skills and looks, I'm afraid she'll attract the jealousy of all the women in the world. Subordinate Guyue greets the palace master. Guyue made the first move. He respectfully knelt on the ground and called out to the woman. It was like an alarm bell that instantly woke up the intoxicated crowd. Huh. All the elders present couldn't hold it in any longer. Their auras, which had been restrained, loosened slightly, and they directly knelt on the ground. Some of the more timid ones even fell directly to the ground. Bang! Bang! Instantly, all the remaining people were like little birds with broken wings. However, they knelt in unison with extreme tacit understanding and didn't dare raise their heads while trembling. On the other hand, Zhuqiu Feng, Wu Kuan, and the others who had their backs to her instantly revealed horrified expressions when they saw the reaction of everyone. They turned around extremely slowly, and when they saw the woman's appearance, they instantly went limp on the ground. The woman that walked out was the palace master of Drive Palace, Duanmu Xiaoman. A trace of bright light surged into Han Wulong's eyes, and Han Yuro was able to sense Han Wulong's trembling. Palace? Palace master? Is it really Duanmu Xiaoman? Han Yuro was flabbergasted and cried out in a daze. Everyone who wasn't from Drive Palace had surprised and astounded expressions. Elder Giyue and all the experts of Drive Palace were already over 70 years old. So why was this palace master only 20 years old? She might be even older than your great-grandmother. Han Wulong spoke in a light voice. Thump! These words terrified Han Yuro to the point of directly leaping back. She instantly covered her nose and dodged to Han Wulong's side as if she'd seen a monster. Duanmu Xiaoman swept the surroundings with her gaze that was like ice shot towards everyone present, and her slender and graceful waist emanated a terrifying aura that was like 1,000-year-old ice, causing everyone to tremble uncontrollably. Were they? Duanmu Xiaoman spoke indifferently. A short word sounded out from Duanmu Xiaoman's throat, and her voice that was gentle like a feather entered into the hearts of everyone like flowing water. At the same time, it carried an extremely cold aura that instantly froze everyone's divine sense. It was bone-piercingly cold, and the atmosphere was heavy. Everyone was clearly aware that Duanmu Xiaoman had come to denounce them, even though the Drive Soul competition would officially begin tomorrow. But today was the registration for the test, so all the personal disciples were present, so it would absolutely not be so desolate and miserable with only a few people here and there. A cold wind blew past the enormous plaza, causing it to seem even more desolate. Only Elder Guyue continued. Palace Master, today is indeed the day of registration for the Drive Soul competition, but it was destroyed by Zhuqiu Feng. Zhuqiu Feng, who was suddenly called out instantly, seemed like a sinner, and he lay on the ground in fear and trepidation while large beads of sweat and tears rolled down his face. Palace Master, don't listen to Guyue's nonsense. The Drive Soul competition today is completely normal. It was he who brought 2 outsiders in, and he even invited the boundless Sex Master. Our Drive Palace's reputation is going to be completely ruined by them. Tianwu and Achu were instantly infuriated, and Guyue frowned as well. As an old man, it wasn't good for him to continue causing trouble before the Palace Master. Unexpectedly, Zhuqiu Feng complained first. It was truly disgusting. Zhuqiu Feng, stop spouting bullshit from your ancestors. In any case, Achu wasn't a member of the Drive Palace anymore, and she was filled with rage because of her older sister. Right, old man Zhua, stop spouting bullshit. Han Wulong took the opportunity to curse as well. Zhuqiu Feng was extremely calm instead, and he didn't say a single word. Instantly, all the teaching elders present revealed expressions of disdain, and they really suspected that they'd stood on the wrong side. Hiss! Duanmu Xiaoman was still expressionless. She raised her lily-white hand, and an incomparably vast and mighty soul, like a torrential downpour, immediately hit everyone's soul. Energy rippled out like a wave of light, and the tear-stained space behind her instantly closed. Wind and lightning intersected while lightning rumbled. Everything happened in a casual manner. How formidable! In these past few years, this woman has become much stronger. Han Wulong's eyes narrowed as he circulated his energy, and the 3 palace masters who were suppressed instantly felt extremely relaxed. Chapter 1628. Duanmu Xiaoman looked at Han Wulong with an indifferent expression. Her eyes were like charming gems, and there was a feeling of power hidden within them. Can you let her go now? Han Wulong's body trembled. Duanmu Xiaoman's voice was soft but firm. His aura weakened a little. They hurt my daughter, Han Wulong stubbornly said. Duanmu Xiaoman carefully looked at Han Yuro, who was beside Han Wulong. Being stared at by Duanmu Xiaoman like this, Han Yuro, who had always been hot and bold, became shy. You already have a daughter. Duanmu Xiaoman looked at Han Wulong, her eyes as cold as ice. Han Wulong did not expect Duanmu Xiaoman to say this, and immediately felt very embarrassed. He said softly, yes. Back then, I admired the fame of Crane Pillar and attacked twice to ask for advice. Unexpectedly, Duanmu Qingtian was no longer there, and only you were there. Now that I think about it, it was 30 years ago. Yes, you are still so good-looking. Han Wulong was a little embarrassed. His huge body was a little embarrassed, and the side of his face that was as firm as a knife was slightly red. Han Yuro was stunned on the spot. What was going on? My father, Duanmu Xiaoman, Crane Pillar the Sky? Shy. What were these things? You and I have some friendship. You can go. Duanmu Xiaoman did not seem to listen to Han Wulong at all. Han Wulong suddenly raised his eyes and said coldly, But they deserve to die. You have already hurt them, and you have also apologized. Whether they deserve to die or not, it is my decision, not yours. Han Yuro's eyes suddenly surged with a trace of killing intent. The killing intent was like 1,000 ice blades and instantly came to Han Wulong's side. Pucci. Han Wulong's protective golden light shattered, like fragments exploding in the sky. Countless sparkling and translucent fragments danced in the sky, mixed with Han Wulong's blood. A black shadow flashed in the sky, and Han Wulong instantly collapsed a few feet away, clutching his chest and groaning in pain. Jin Hong spun around, his body trembling. Everyone was trembling uncontrollably. They had no idea what had just happened. Duanmu Xiaoman's speed was unimaginably fast. Even the powerful Han Wulong was unable to withstand a single blow from Duanmu Xiaoman. This woman is too abnormal. Han Wulong cried out in pain. His heart was in turmoil, but his mouth was still speaking. Palace Master Duanmu's cultivation is getting higher and higher. We will never be able to catch up to him. Father, old witch, how dare you hurt my father? I want your life. Without waiting for Duanmu to reply, Han Yuro saw that her father was injured and wanted to rush forward. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. They couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Han Yuro. Guyue almost blacked out. He immediately rushed out and blocked in front of Han Yuro, pulling her back. Pa! Han Wulong didn't care about his bleeding chest. He struggled to get up and pushed Han Yuro to the ground. Only Han Yuro was left standing in a daze. Boom! With a loud sound, an icy blue yuan qi flowed down from the sky like a ribbon. Guyue and Han Wulong had no choice but to condense their yuan qi attribute light again. The two of them immediately spread out their space domain. A terrifying fluctuation shook the universe and resisted the icy blue silk. Bang! The two of them resisted for a while, but in less than a breath's time, their bodies sank into the white jade ground. Strangely, there were no cracks on the ground. It was as if the two of them were born on the ground. Palace Master, please have mercy. This old man has something to say. Guyue couldn't help but beg for mercy. His usually calm face was filled with shock. A gush of blood spurted out. Chi! Duanmu Xiaoman immediately retracted her torrential strength. The two of them quickly escaped from ground. Finally, they couldn't help but spit out mouthfuls of blood. Their bodies were like pieces of paper. It was obvious that they were severely injured. If Han Wulong hadn't pushed Han Yuro out in time, they would have died on the spot. This kind of suppression in terms of strength caused everyone to be extremely shocked. Their eyes were slowly filled with fear at the terrifying strength. Even facing Guyue, Duanmu Xiaoman didn't hold back at all. A cold voice sounded, helping outsiders a small punishment. Father! Han Yuro crawled to his side and cried. Han Wulong panted heavily and smiled at Han Yuro. Father, I'm fine. Don't talk nonsense outside, it's not home. Ha! Before he finished speaking, another large amount of blood sprayed into the sky. Instantly, the sky was dyed red with blood, and it was extremely terrifying. The group of experts behind him rushed forward and poured their vitality into Han Wulong's body. I was wrong, Father, I was wrong. Han Yuro still couldn't stop her tears. Her burning body couldn't stop trembling. Give your grandpa Guyue the mysterious grade pill, Han Wulong said softly. Han Yuro's eyes suddenly lit up. She immediately gave the two of them the pill. Their faces slightly reddened, but they were still seriously injured and couldn't move. Palace Master Duanmu, my daughter is young and ignorant. She said the wrong thing. If you really want to teach her a lesson, please kill me. Han Wulong, who was insufferably arrogant, was now speaking humbly for Han Yuro. Everyone present sucked in a cold breath and shook their heads in amazement. In the face of absolute strength, everything was in vain. Duanmu glanced at Li Shiran, who was still lying on the ground, and Ah Chu, who didn't know the situation. A trace of undetectable sadness flashed in his eyes. Looking at Han Wulong, Duanmu Xiaoman said, You saved the disciples of my imperial palace. I'll spare you this time. 30 years ago, I spared your life twice. This time, I'll spare you again. 3 lives in exchange for my vice palace master. Are you still going to stop me? Guyue's eyes couldn't help but fluctuate. He thought to himself, killing people isn't enough to establish power. Winning people with virtue is wisdom. My palace master fights the universe with all his might and rules with magnanimity, as expected of our heavenly command palace lord. Quickly thank Palace Master Duanmu. Guyue coughed and pushed the Han father and daughter, who were still absent-minded. Then another stream of blood slowly flowed out. Han Yuro, who was in a panic, hurriedly nodded lightly with Han Wulong. Her eyes were filled with reverence. Han Wulong said, "Thank you, Palace Master Duanmu. I'm impressed." Guyue brings Wichio Feng, Wu Kuan, Chung Gaoming, and everyone to the Iron Rules Pavilion. Everyone who left Drive Heaven Creek will be brought along as well. Duanmu Xiaoman said softly, then turned and left. Yes, Guyue replied, loudly with a solemn expression. Spare my life, Palace Master. Spare my life. Many people who stayed behind had already smelled a trace of danger. They were terrified and trembled nonstop. Just now, many people left Imperial Palace Master Duanmu Xiaoman. The experts who stayed behind didn't open up a barrier to protect Imperial Palace Master Duanmu Xiaoman. They weren't much different from those who fled. At this moment, they were extremely nervous and didn't want to die. Chapter 1629. When he looked at Zwichio Feng and the other two Vice Palace Masters, they were weak and powerless like wilted eggplants, and their expressions were filled with extreme despair. The matter that he'd schemed for many years had actually been easily resolved by Duanmu. What sort of feeling of powerlessness was this? Ha ha ha! After a short while, Zwichio Feng was paralyzed on the spot, and he laughed loudly as if he'd gone mad. On the other hand, all the teaching elders seemed as if their bones had melted, and they ceaselessly shook their heads and cried bitterly. They knew that what awaited them was only endless torture. Rower, help me up! Han Wulong was in extreme pain as he looked at Duanmu Xiaoman, who was about to leave. After she finished speaking, Duanmu Xiaoman turned around lightly, and her fragrance drifted out. Han Wulong disregarded her charm and spoke loudly once more. Palace Master Duanmu, I've only come for one thing. Please grant me my wish. Speak. Duanmu Xiaoman didn't even turn around as she spoke coldly. I want to see Su-yi. Han Wulong's eyes were bright like stars, and his gaze was extremely firm. Palace Master Duanmu, please hand Su-yi over to my immeasurable sect. Han Wulong took a deep breath and spoke anxiously when he saw Duanmu didn't reply. After a moment of silence, Duanmu Xiaoman continued walking towards the distance. Every step she took was like an illusion, and only Han Wulong's voice resounded ceaselessly in the sky. Everyone was extremely surprised, as they never imagined that the immeasurable sect's master had actually come to Heaven Command Palace, especially for Su-yi. This news instantly caused an uproar in everyone's hearts. Exactly what sort of miraculous ability does Su-yi possess? On the other hand, Guyue was happy instead. The Palace Master has probably let Su-yi go. Based on this, perhaps the Palace Master has already acknowledged what I said. He was instantly in high spirits, and he was 100 times happier than when he'd subdued Zwichio Feng and caused Heaven Command Palace to fall into the hands of thieves. Hey! Han Yuro cried out anxiously, and Han Wulong was unable to stop her no matter what. Palace Master Duanmu, is Su-yi all right? After she finished speaking, a trace of concern and shyness flashed on Han Yuro's face. In the clear sky that was already far away, an extremely pleasant voice floated faintly, like ice, saying, "It has nothing to do with you." Also, Han Wulong, remember, Heavenly Palace won't fight for the #1 spot in Cloud State. This sentence was like a giant steel, all directly piercing into Han Wulong's heart. He immediately shook his head and said, "Sure enough, I thought too much. Duanmu of the Heavenly Drive Palace is the true legend of the Cloud State." As soon as she finished speaking, Duanmu Xiaoman had already drifted into the distance. Her light and graceful figure disappeared like a fairy in the clouds. Apart from Ling Yefeng and a few others who had just contributed, the rest of the people present were all frowning. "Everyone, follow me to the Iron Rules Hall," Guyue shouted loudly. Immediately, The people who were paralyzed on the ground began to panic. Elder Gyue, please help me plead with Elder Duanmu. Elder Gyue, I was wrong. It's all Zhuqiu Feng's fault. He was bewitched and tempted us to become vassal elders. Many ordinary elders, as well as teaching elders who were scared out of their wits, had tears in their eyes. They were extremely miserable. When they looked at Zhuqiu Feng again, he had already gone crazy. He was laughing loudly on the spot. Ha ha! I'm the Palace Master of the Heavenly Drive Palace. I'm the Palace Master of the Heavenly Drive Palace. Han Wulong, Han Yuro, and the others were also constantly shaking their heads and sighing. Han Wulong said softly, "The Heavenly Drive Palace is secluded and independent. There are indeed many geniuses in it. It's really rare to be able to reach the middle of the 5th grade at the age of 50 or 60. The Origin Emperor realm is already the lifelong dream of most people. Obviously, these people have broken through the shackles of life, but walked into another vortex. Fame and fortune are gone in the blink of an eye. It's really sad that the people of the Heavenly Drive Palace can't see through these things. How many storms are there in life? How many people like Han Wulong are there in the world?" Gyue walked in with a slightly pale face as he stroked his beard and smiled. Han Wulong was slightly embarrassed. The injury he had just received was still shocking. He cupped his hands and said, "Elder Gyue is too kind. I'm afraid this person from the Heavenly Drive Palace has already surpassed our scope of knowledge." Palace Master Duanmu was able to roam freely in the Heavenly Drive Palace for so many years. He's naturally a genius. Sect Master Han, there's no need to be modest. In time, another Origin Domain expert will appear in the Cloud Prefecture's boundless sect. Gyue said with a smile. Han Wulong pondered for a moment and said, "Perhaps there's someone who's advancing faster than me." Sect Master Han, you're talking about Su Yi? A bright light flashed through Gyue's eyes. Han Wulong nodded lightly and said, "Roer has been talking about him since she returned. Coupled with the matter of this kid in the Central Prefecture and the Chaos region, I've heard about it. Thus, I specially came this time. I don't know if Sect Master Su will be able to participate in tomorrow's Heavenly Drive Soul competition." Gyue sighed slightly and looked at the quaking peak. The last time he saw Su Yi, the situation wasn't very optimistic. It was a miracle that he could survive. Can this kid continue to create miracles? Gyue's eyes rippled faintly. When the Heavenly Drive Soul competition was mentioned, Han Yuro bit her lips tightly. She seemed to have an idea. She turned to look at Han Wulong and said, "Father, tomorrow is the Heavenly Drive Soul competition. Since I promised to participate, I will definitely participate. You should go back first." The corners of Han Wulong's mouth curved slightly, but there was an anxious expression between his brows. He said, "What? Are you still thinking about that, Su Yi?" No. I promised Elder Gyue. You've told me since I was young that the people of the Boundless Sect have boundless courage. How can I break my promise? Li Shiran and Ah Chu are seriously injured. I don't know how they are doing." Then, Han Yuro said in a low and timid voice, "Why? Duanmu told me not to interfere. So, I shouldn't interfere? Su Yi isn't hers. Damn it." Then, Han Yuro raised her eyes and looked at Elder Gyue as if she was pleading for mercy. Gyue immediately smiled and said, "Sect Master Han, it's rare for Yuro to have such thoughts. How about lending her to this old man for 2 days? I promise to return you a complete pearl in your palm." Han Wulong immediately frowned. Why did Gyue also get involved? He said softly, "The Heavenly Drive Palace is already like this. Can a Heavenly Drive Soul competition still be held?" Gyue nodded his head and said, "This year's Heavenly Soul Tournament is the first time that Palace Master Duanmu has participated in the entire tournament. Furthermore, it is also a preparation for the Heavenly Wind Ranking Tournament." Han Wulong immediately understood and said in a muffled voice, "Okay, Elder Gyue, I wonder if there's a place for me to stay in Lingua Peak?" "Ha, this old man's Lingua Peak is small. I don't know if it can accommodate a soaring golden dragon like you," Gyue said with a smile. "Father, you're staying too?" Han Yuro immediately smiled and held Han Wulong's thick arm. She smiled like a spring day. As long as my daughter likes it, there's nothing I can't do. I want to see what kind of person is worth my daughter's endless nagging. Han Wulong laughed loudly. The entire empty square rumbled, and the aura of an expert surged like waves. Chapter 16:30. Aya, father, don't speak nonsense. Han Yuro couldn't help but stomp her feet anxiously, and a trace of blush flashed across her face. Ha ha ha! Han Wulong, who was around 2 meters tall, trembled in the air. One was tall while the other was short, and the contrast between the two was extremely cute. In the empty plaza, some were happy while others were sad. One side was gloomy while the other side was cheerful. After that, Zhuqiu Feng's group arrived at the Hall of Iron Rules under Guyue's lead. On the other hand, Tian Wu led Han Wulong, Han Yuro, and the experts of the immeasurable sect back to Lingua Peak. They temporarily stayed there and waited for the Heaven Rider Soul competition to begin again. The Hall of Iron Rules was also located in front of Zhongzhen Peak. It was located between the front and rear peaks of Zhongzhen Peak. Since ancient times, it was the place where the Heaven Rider Palace was in charge of punishment. Once someone entered the Hall of Iron Rules, it was very difficult for them to leave. Every single member of the Heaven Rider Palace treated the Hall of Iron Rules as a tomb for cultivation. So, it was either a serious criminal of the Heaven Rider Palace or someone who was a threat to the Heaven Rider Palace was locked up in there. After Zhuqiu Feng became the acting palace master, he closed down the Hall of Iron Rules and dismissed the elders in order to win the hearts of the people. So, the number of people who supported him in the palace immediately increased. Now, they had to receive punishment in the Hall of Iron Rules that he had personally removed. It was truly extremely ironic. Many people present had already turned extremely pale and were trembling like sifting chaff. Under Guyue's strong request, the Hall of Iron Rules was reopened with the help of the Palace Master's Jade Token. Now, it just happened to come in handy. A large group of people knelt in front of the Hall of Iron Rules. They knelt in an orderly manner in front of a solemn and dignified small house, but only Duanmu Xiaoman was nowhere to be seen. The criminals of the Heaven Rider Palace, led by Zhuqiu Feng, were all kneeling at the entrance. None of them dared to breathe loudly. The atmosphere in the entire space had become extremely tense, and traces of the aura of blood and death drifted through the air. Meanwhile, Elder Gue, Elder Guanlan, Elder Yinding, and Elder Yin Lu were standing on a stone plateau. Their expressions were extremely relaxed as they conversed with each other. They were all waiting for Elder Gue to come out of the Iron Rules Hall. They all wanted to see with their own eyes what would happen to this group of arrogant people. After a long time, the Iron Rules Hall was still completely silent. When they saw that the multicolored light on the horizon was like a pill, the golden sun illuminating the heavens, already about to descend to the back of the mountain, the 3 Central Continent Vice Palace Masters couldn't sit still any longer. Strange, Palace Lord, why haven't you summoned us yet? Guanlan, Yin Lu, and the other elders looked at each other. Guanlan asked doubtfully while stroking his beard. No news was the worst news for them. The Palace Lord's temperament was fickle, and no one knew how this matter would change. Yin Lu glanced at Guanlan, cleared his throat, and said in a deep voice, "Why are you feeling uneasy? It should be the people below who are afraid. They broke the rules of Heavenly Command Palace and disrupted cultivation. Heavenly Command Palace's reputation has been ruined by this group of bastards. I believe in the Palace Lord's judgment. Fatty, you should obediently stay where you are. Save yourself the trouble of jumping around in front of us." Elder Yinding raised his eyebrows and laughed. He looked down at the people in Zhuqiu Feng's faction below with disdain and said indifferently, "I don't know. Elder Guyue has been in there for so long. Logically speaking, the Palace Lord should summon us if there's something. Moreover, there are many people who haven't come here yet. He's still sending people to search for the people who escaped first. But there are so many people. Old Yin, do you think the Palace Lord will punish all of them?" Guanlan moved his fat body and asked doubtfully. Yin Ding and Yin Lu nodded at the same time. They didn't hesitate at all and said in a deep voice, "Although it's said that the law can't punish the majority, our palace lord isn't someone that others can compare to. If you don't believe me, how about we make a bet?" "I won't bet. Even if all of you didn't say anything, I was of the same opinion. These people should have been dealt with properly since a long time ago." A trace of a bright light flashed in Guanlan's eyes, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. Wu Kuan and Cheng Gaoming's backs were drenched in sweat as they listened to the conversation between the three vice-palace lords, and they shook their heads without end while feeling extremely regretful in their hearts. Alas, all of his illustrious reputation suffered calamity, yet he's gone mad. Wu Kuan spoke angrily. I'm a palace master of the Heavenly Command Palace. All of you are acting presumptuously. How Tian capture all of them?" Zhuqiu Feng's body was shackled, and his gaze was blurry while he spoke with slight infatuation. "Zhuqiu Feng, can you stop acting like a madman?" Cheng Gaoming spoke angrily. As he looked at Zhuqiu Feng, who was cracking his fingers and making merry, a ball of flames suddenly arose in his heart, and he was extremely agitated. What? He's really acting like a madman? Wu Kuan's eyes were opened wide, and he didn't dare believe it. "I don't think that a person that's able to sit in the position of Palace Master of the Heavenly Command Palace would easily become a fool. Do you think we're blind?" Cheng Gaoming spoke furiously. There was a thin and tall figure that was trembling amidst the kneeling crowd, and it was Zhuqiu Feng's disciple, Jun Haoyan. Everything was going according to Zhuqiu Feng's plan, and he was just a little bit away from being able to prove his strength before everyone. As he thought about this, a clear tear flowed down from his handsome face. Plop! It ceaselessly dripped onto the ground, and it instantly moistened the entire ground. Why? Just a little bit more. In the current situation, not only was his master unable to become the palace master of the Heavenly Command Palace, even his dream of continuing to ascend to the peak of the martial Tao and accomplish great feats had been destroyed. Is my life over just like this? No, I'm unwilling. Impossible. Why have I, Jun Haoyan, cultivated bitterly for so many years? Jun Haoyan looked at his master that was acting like a madman in the distance, and the beautiful vision his master had in his heart had been completely overturned, causing his heart to be filled with resentment. Bang! Jun Haoyan smashed his fist heavily onto the ground, and the veins on his entire arm instantly bulged while dark red blood seeped out from his pale knuckles. He was extremely regretful for following such a master, regretful for not stopping his master in time, and he roared furiously in his heart. "I can do it. Give me a chance, just one. I'll definitely prove my worth." The elders that noticed the abnormality in the situation sensed an aura fluctuation in the distance with their souls, and it was coming from Jun Haoyan's direction. The tall palace master of the Yuzhou Palace, Luo Wuya, shook his robe, and his gaze sank as he said, "Alas, such a good seedling. It's truly a pity. I originally thought that this little kid would be able to represent my Heavenly Command Palace in the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament and make a name for himself in the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 ocean. In terms of natural talent in the soul, this little kid is indeed a genius that's hard to come by in a few dozen years of my Heavenly Command Palace. But he followed the wrong person and stood on the wrong side." Some elders instantly started to sigh softly. On the other hand, Yun Ding, Yin Lu, and Yun Ding were instantly unmoved. The three of them, who had always been extremely interested in everything related to Zhuqiu Feng's faction, glanced deeply at Jun Haoyan. Chapter 1631. It seems that Jun Haoyan didn't participate in the power struggle this time. Guanlan asked softly when he didn't see Jun Haoyan's figure at the front peak. Yin Lu also said in agreement. Although this kid is a little eccentric, he wholeheartedly immerses himself in soul techniques. After being suppressed by Zhuqiu Feng for so many years, it's not easy for him to have such a breakthrough. Soul manipulation is the most important thing. This kid can do it. What do you mean he can do it? Regardless of whether he participated or not, the winner takes all. Can't our Yutian palace survive without a genius like him? Yin Ding said with contempt. Old Yin, you can't say that. The master is a coward, but the disciple isn't a coward. Ask yourself, were you able to have his cultivation back then? Hao Yin is probably a top existence in Saint Mountain, right? At such a young age, he already has the strength of a middle fourth grade. Coupled with the fact that he's immersed in soul cultivation all year round, he can even match a great success primitive emperor. This isn't something you can say. Yin Lu said, it's still not comparable to Su Kid. Yin Ding said stubbornly after thinking about it. Su Kid is powerful, but it's also true that he didn't join Yuqian Palace. Now Yuqian Palace has a little Ah Chu, but Ah Chu is still young. We have to worry about the future of Yuqian Palace. Our generation can't do it anymore. Hearing this, all the vassal elders fell silent. The situation of Yuqian Palace was indeed like that. The focus of Yuqian Palace had always been on soul cultivation. They didn't pursue martial arts as fervently as ordinary warriors. Thus, they cultivated self-cultivation and didn't compete with the outside world. However, they also didn't allow anyone to bully Yuqian Palace. In Yuqian Palace, martial arts was the first line of defense to protect the dignity of the sect. However, alchemy and weapon refining were the foundation to restrict other sections. Soul manipulation was the method to spread the sect. Although there weren't many people, Yuqian Palace's talent density wasn't inferior to any of the top sects in the continent. The 18 elders, including the vassal elders, teaching elders, and commander elders, were all at the beginning of the 5th grade and above. They were all in the primitive ancestor realm and were the absolute foundation of any second-rate sect. They were the sect's greatest weapon, based on the cultivation of a soul tamer. Even compared to the experts of the Sacred Mountain, they were still evenly matched. In fact, with the enhancement of their weapons and their natural affinity with the soul, they were even stronger than the experts of the Sacred Mountain. The 7 supreme elders of Command Heavenly Palace were even more reclusive. They were the foundation of Command Heavenly Palace. In a real fight, Command Heavenly Palace wouldn't lose to any of the top factions. Apart from the Grand Elder, who never came out of seclusion, and Duanmu Xiaoman, even the 103 elders of Archkay Lake were all at least at the middle stage of the 4th rank, which was equivalent to the Origin Emperor realm. They were all comparable to the elders of Sacred Mountain. Just like Merciless West, if he didn't meet Su Yi, he would only be a 3rd-level Origin Emperor at the age of 60. Even so, his name still spread far and wide in the Chaos region. What's more, Duanmu Xiaoman had reached such a high level of cultivation. What would the heavenly sovereigns and saint kings think if they saw this? Would they still have the strength to fight? Therefore, Command Heavenly Palace had reached a new peak in the 100 or 200 years since Duanmu Xiaoman's generation. These experts had all grown up under the shadow of Duanmu Xiaoman. However, how many Duanmu Xiaoman were there in the world? After Duanmu Xiaoman, the lack of successors was a clear sign of Command Heavenly Palace's weakness. It had become a sore point for every elder who cared about Command Heavenly Palace. If Su Yi isn't willing to join Command Heavenly Palace, it'll be hard for me to find someone more outstanding than Hao Yin. Long Pas Han, the Palace Master of Heavenly Dragon Continent, said with a sniff. We've only heard about how strong Su Yi is. However, Hao Yin is ready-made. Moreover, we've watched Hao Yin grow up. Although he's a bit eccentric because of Zhuoqiu Feng, there's nothing else. Yin Ding immediately exploded. He couldn't hide any dirt in his heart and said, "What's the meaning of this, old friends? Do you want to be rehabilitated?" Ha ha ha. Old Yin is excited. Luo Weia stroked his beard and his robe shook as he continued. You're wrong. It's not about being rehabilitated. Yin Ding, we just don't let a bad person go. Don't blame a good person wrongly. Even if we take 10,000 steps back, it's not up to us to decide whether to forgive or not. Then what do you mean? Yin Ding snorted and glanced at Jun Hao Yin in the distance. Justice is in everyone's heart. If we all go to the Palace Master and ask her to give Hao Yin a chance to participate in the Command Heavenly Soul competition and see the results, maybe it'll be a good thing? What's a good thing? Guanlon moved closer and pricked up his ears. Hao Ian won first place, which proves that he has the strength to survive. He's also being cleaned up. How can it not be a good thing for Command Heavenly Palace to keep a talent? In the soul competition, if this kid shows any signs of deceit, we'll kill him on the spot. It'll also shut some people's mouths and make them speechless. Luo Weya said. Elder Luo is right. Sigh. I'm getting old, and I can't bear to do these mundane things. The three Vice Palace Masters were silent. They looked down at the Iron Rules Hall and said, all of this depends on how Elder Gyue talks to the Palace Master. No rush, no rush. How about it? Didn't you three want to make a bet? Come, let's open 2 bets. Let's bet. Long Pashan's eyes flashed with a sharp light as he continued to speak eloquently. Let's bet on whether Su Yi will come back or not. Let's bet on who will win between Su Yi and Jun Haoyan. How about it? I think it's okay. Long Pashan's muscular body was trembling. He rubbed his fists and was eager to try. Go away. We don't have time for that. It's useless for us to talk so enthusiastically. Let's wait for Elder Gyue to come out first. Bang! A beam of golden light burst out from the Hall of Iron Rules. Immediately, everyone felt their blood and chi churning. It carried an extremely terrifying aura. The roar brought about a terrifying gale. Elder Gyue is coming out. Elder Gyue's spirit was hale and hearty, and he didn't look like he was seriously injured at all. So, after such a long delay, the Palace Lord was treating Elder Gyue's injuries? Elder Gyue, so the Palace Master gave you special treatment? Long Pashan's slightly shorter body swayed slightly. He raised his eyebrows and said softly, yes, this old man also wants special treatment. Guanlon joined in the fun. Yinding immediately said, okay, you also let the Palace Master do it. If you're still alive, then let the Palace Master give you special treatment. Old Yin, what are you talking about? Long Pashan's face twitched, and he didn't say anything else. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 1632. Haha. Old friends, don't panic. Palace Lord is a wise judge of right and wrong. The reason he stayed in the Hall of Rules for so long was to ask me about the ins and outs of this matter. Those who remain loyal to Heavenly Drive Palace will be used by Palace Lord in the future. As for those who have ill intentions towards Heavenly Drive Palace, I'm afraid they will be consigned to eternal damnation. Elder Gyue purposely said the last 4 words very loudly. Immediately, the group below began to tremble with unease. Some of the more timid ones even fainted on the spot. All right, elders, now pass on the Palace Lord's order. Whoosh! The 10 elders and 1 or 2 scattered elders immediately half-knelt on the ground and listened carefully with a serious expression. Disciples of Heavenly Drive Palace, listen up. The Heavenly Drive Soul Competition will continue tomorrow. All those who cause trouble will be temporarily locked up in the Hall of Rules and dealt with after the competition. Tonight, I invite all the elders here to sort out the list of criminals and those who can participate in the Heavenly Drive Soul Competition. The competition will continue tomorrow morning. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Gyue's robe fluttered, and his expression became serious again. Just now, I was revising the rules of the Heavenly Drive Soul Competition to simplify everything, only to find the strongest Heavenly Drive Palace disciple. Tonight, I'll have to trouble you all. We were just saying that it was a pity for Jun Haoyan. Gyue glanced at the list below and said indifferently, Master is guilty, but the disciples are not jackals of the same tribe. Please follow the rules of Heavenly Drive Palace and carefully select the disciples. This is necessary for both the Heavenly Drive Soul Competition and a revival of Heavenly Drive Palace in the future. Yes, the elders' expressions were solemn and did not dare to criticize. Elder Luo, the Heavenly Wind ranking competition will be held in Yu Province. Palace Lord summons you to the hall for a discussion. Other elders, please begin. Luo Weya looked deeply at Gyue and lightly nodded. Yuan Shi rose from his feet, and a purple cloud like gale suddenly appeared and rushed into the Hall of Rules. Palace Lord Duanmu is indeed wise. Long Pasan nodded and said. After the announcement, Guyue brought the 3 vice palace masters back to Lingwe Peak. Everyone who was kneeling in front of the Hall of Iron Rules immediately left under the command of the elders. As soon as the 4 returned to Lingwe Peak, Guanlon impatiently asked Guyue about Su Yi's situation. Palace Master Guyue, what happened to Su Yi? Guyue sighed softly. He sighed 3 times in a row under his deep and benevolent face, which confused Yin Ding and the others. Let's go in first. Han Yuro and Han Wulong were also waiting in the room. Guyue briefly explained the Palace Master's punishment, and Han Wulong couldn't help but nod. Palace Master Duanmu, you should prioritize the big picture. If it were me, I would do the same. Guyue pondered for a moment. He looked around at Tian Wu, Ah Chu, and the others and said, Therefore, you must quickly prepare for tomorrow's Imperial Soul competition. The test this time is no longer the standard. Everything will be simplified. The details will be announced tomorrow. Fortunately, you and Ran Er's soul quality is very high. This is undeniable. By the way, Ran Er, how is she? Achu looked at Elder Guyue and said gratefully to Han Wulong, Master, Sect Master Han has already sent expert from the Infinity Sect to heal my sister. She's fine now. She's resting in the room. Sect Master Han, this old man thanks you. Guyue bowed slightly to Han Wulong. Han Wulong waved his hand and said casually, You're too polite. Elder Guyue, the Imperial Soul Competition, Sai Ro, will also be participating. Everyone is in the same boat now. It's fine. Elder Guyue took out a bottle of elixirs from his sleeve and handed it to Achu. He smiled and said, Since Sect Master Han healed you, the Palace Master will give you these elixirs for self-defense in the future. It will also be of great benefit to ordinary elixirs research. Han Wulong's eyes moved slightly. He said with surprise, This is a gift from Palace Master Duanmu? Guyue nodded heavily and sighed. Our Imperial Soul Palace has Palace Master Duanmu. It's really our Imperial Soul Palace's fortune. Under Qing Shuang's arrogance, she is full of concern for the Imperial Soul Palace. Ran Er and Chu Er's performance in the Imperial Soul Palace was especially praised by the Palace Master. Therefore, he personally gave you this bottle of mysterious grade supreme micro pills. You must concentrate on cultivation in the future. It's your own fortune to be able to receive the Palace Master's favor. Immediately, everyone gasped. Thinking of the powerful aura in the day before the Zhongzhen Peak, no one could imagine that Duanmu Xiaoman had such tender feelings in her heart. By the way, Palace Master Guyue, have you heard any news about Su Yi from the Palace Master? Han Yuro's brows furrowed. Guanlon, Yin Ding, and Yin Lu were also very anxious. They said anxiously, Palace Master Guyue, you can tell us now. We're all very anxious. There are 2 pieces of news. The good news is that today is the Imperial Soul Palace's registration day. The Palace Master personally came to ask for leave for Su Yi. Hearing this news, everyone's eyes flashed with countless scenes of surprise. Their hearts were like tens of thousands of horses galloping. The Palace Master personally came to ask for leave for Su Yi. No one had ever received such treatment. Duanmu Xiaoman, who had always lived alone, would go to this extent for a young boy. That woman actually asked for leave for Su Yi. Han Yuro's expression became a little unnatural. It was only after Han Wulong gently pulled her back that she calmed down. The others who noticed Han Yuro's change were also stunned. But there's another problem. Su Yi can't participate in the registration himself. This means that he hasn't passed the critical period. It can be said that his life is in danger. Then how is Su Yi now? That's right. The Palace Master is very mysterious. How would we know how Su Yi is doing? Several Vice Palace Masters echoed. Guyue stroked his long beard and sighed. Since the Palace Master has already come to register for Su Yi, with the Palace Master's profound cultivation base, Su Yi will naturally be able to survive. Everyone, it's better to wait properly. Hearing Guyue's words, everyone didn't relax their frowns. Instead, they became even more serious. The protective mountain formation is no small matter. It's a restriction set up by countless generations of strong cultivators of our imperial palace. This elder Tong actually used the protective mountain formation to deal with a weak boy. He really dared to do it. The more Guanlon thought about it, the angrier he got. His round body couldn't help but tremble, and a strong murderous intent surged out. Evil people will be dealt with by evil people. Retribution is already here. All right, it's getting late. Tomorrow morning, the new competition rules of Imperial Palace will be out. The competition rules personally set by the Palace Master will only be many times more difficult than the previous one. Everyone better be prepared. After that, everyone's eyes shone brightly. They were incomparably serious. After exchanging a few pleasantries, they directly returned to their rooms. In the courtyard of Spirit Mountain Villa, the moonlight shone. That old woman can't also like Sue-E, right? Han Yuro propped up her pink almond-shaped cheeks and looked at the full moon in the sky. You really do have feelings for that boy. Han Wulong's huge figure stepped out from the shadows. With extreme gentleness, he said faintly, "Come, wonderful book house." Chapter 1633. Father. Han Yuro was slightly panicked. Seeing Han Wulong walking out from the darkness, she dodged slightly. "Rower, you've grown up. Some things are normal, but..." Han Wulong wanted to say something, but stopped. His broad energy kept circulating around his body. The golden dragon mark was like a divine light in the sky. But what? Han Yuro's eyes flashed with panic. She dodged slightly and said softly. Han Wulong immediately took a step forward. The golden dragon mark appeared. The surging golden wave was like a monstrous sea that instantly filled the small courtyard. "Rower, tell me honestly, did you really feel the same golden dragon aura from him as I did?" Han Yuro nodded heavily and said, "At first, I thought he was just a genius, but later on, I discovered that his soul energy was also not to be underestimated. Later on, when we fought in the Palace of Driving Heaven, I felt the same aura as you. I thought I was wrong. Later on, I realized that it was true." Han Wulong frowned. He stood with his hands behind his back. His robe fluttered. He looked at the forest in the distance and stopped talking. "Father, what's wrong?" Looking at Han Wulong's tall body, Han Yuro was a little absent-minded. Han Wulong, who was silent for a long time, suddenly turned around. His eyes were filled with silence. "If that's really the case, Sue-E must return safely in the Yuqian Soul competition tomorrow." Han Yuro nodded lightly. Ever since Sue-E left, Han Yuro's heart was always thinking about Sue-E. Then, Han Wulong looked at Han Yuro and said solemnly, "Also from now on, you must not have any emotional entanglements with Sue-E." Boom! Han Yuro's incomparably hot body was especially charming under the moonlight. Her body suddenly trembled. She frowned and looked at Han Wulong in puzzlement. "Why? If an old woman can do it, why can't I?" Han Wulong, who had always doted on Han Yuro, glared at her. He changed his gentle image and shouted in a low voice, "Don't talk nonsense. This is Yuqian Palace, and if I say no, it means no. You and Sue-E are not suitable." "How are we not suitable?" "He's not married, and I'm not married. I can be with whomever I want. He sacrificed himself to save me, so why can't I express my feelings for him?" Han Yuro, who dared to love and hate, did not back down in her words. Her eyebrows were full of anger as she shouted, "Yuro, Father has promised you anything since you were young, but this is the only thing I can't promise you. If you want a good husband, even if I have to turn the entire continent upside down, I will still find one for you. But Sue-E, I can't. Absolutely not." After he finished speaking, Han Wulong's body burst with energy. Instantly, a terrifying and domineering aura swept out like a violent storm. Han Yuro's delicate and alluring body immediately took a few steps back. She felt a metallic sweetness in her chest. The hem of her dress was lifted high up behind her. The white moonlight shone on Han Yuro's scarred face. Her tears flowed down her perfect face. Pitter-patter! When Han Wulong saw this, he felt a sharp pain in his heart, but his expression remained unchanged. Father, I hate you. You're actually afraid of that woman. Pitter-patter. Han Yuro raised her hand and wiped away the tears on her face. She looked at Han Wulong with a broken-hearted expression. Then, she turned around and flew away. She was like a fairy in the moonlight, disappearing into the night sky. Yuro, Han Wulong shouted. The wind blew, and Han Yuro's figure was nowhere to be seen. AI. With a pung sound, Han Wulong's right hand clenched into a fist. A ray of light flew out from his palm and directly cut off a corner of the green stone table. Under the neat cut, the stone table was directly turned into dust. Home. Retracting his aura, Han Wulong's face was extremely serious. His eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness as he looked up to the sky and sighed. Yuro, you must understand your father. You and Su-E are not people of the same world after all. If it's really for your happiness, so what if Yutian Palace is? This world has a limit. Father can't make the decision, but someone has to break it. Han Wulong's aura suddenly dissipated. His tall figure directly sat on the stone bench. His figure was incomparably haggard. At this moment, he was a heartbroken father. The night breeze blew, and the stars dissipated. The golden light from the horizon once again sprinkled down on the mountains and rivers. Amidst the sparkling light, a proud sun rose, as if it was bringing with it new hope. Everyone once again gathered at Zhongshan Square. Ling Yefeng's group had also arrived at the square early. Han Yuro and Han Wulong stood on both sides of the crowd. Han Yuro's brows were filled with sorrow. She also looked very haggard after a sleepless night. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. She glanced at Han Wulong faintly and turned her head away without saying a word. Seeing his daughter like this, Han Wulong's expression was also very unnatural. A trace of pain surged into his eyes again. He could only helplessly stare at the center of the square and try not to think about anything else. Duanmu Xiaoman had already arrived at the square. She sat on the white jade chair in the center. Her expression was proud and aloof, like a fairy who had just floated out of the world. However, unlike yesterday, no one dared to look directly at Duanmu Xiaoman's beautiful face. They all lowered their heads. The vassal elders sat on the two sides of the high platform. The 10 vassals were all unmoving, their expressions calm. The leader elder and several teaching elders were finally selected to stand behind the vassal elders. Their expressions were respectful, and they did not dare to make the slightest noise. Guyue and Luo Wiao walked up the high platform together. Looking at the solemn crowd below, they couldn't help but sigh. Compared to yesterday's sea of people, today's Yutian Palace was really deserted. After a rough calculation, only half of the people from yesterday were selected. Then, they excitedly said in a clear voice, "After the elder selection, all of you are qualified to participate in today's Yutian Soul competition. In other words, you are all carefully selected by our Yutian Palace. You are all enlightened masters who will do your best for our Yutian Palace." Among the crowd, a figure who heard these words had a big throbbing. It was Jun Haoyan who was selected by the elders. Guyue glanced at Jun Haoyan indifferently and then turned to Duanmu Xiaoman. Duanmu Xiaoman slightly nodded, indicating that they could start. Guyue opened the jade slip in his hand and continued. The Yuqian Soul competition will change the rules today. The rules are as follows. Guyue stared at the jade slip with a hesitant expression. After a moment of hesitation, his eyes slightly opened. Then, the vicissitudes of life and experience of the elder's figure appeared again. The Yuqian Soul competition will no longer use the previous 4 rounds as the standard. Today, soul testing, alchemy, tool refining, soul controlling, and martial cultivation will be combined into one. Wow! The participants and elders standing below the stage immediately went into an uproar. What kind of finals was this? They had never heard of it before. For a moment, everyone began to whisper. They used their eyes to express their curiosity and doubts about the competition, but they didn't dare to make any loud noise. Silence. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 1634. Guyu cleared his throat and looked around. He looked at the people who wanted to say something but didn't dare to, and continued. Everyone here has the qualifications to participate in the soul controller competition, but in order to increase efficiency, the competition will be held in one day and the location has changed. This year's soul controlling competition will be held in the Broken Sword Ocean in the Cloud region. Broken Sword Ocean. Everyone was in an uproar and puzzled expressions appeared on their faces. Broken Sword Ocean is an extremely dangerous place. Our heavenly palace has mobilized all of our forces to hold the soul controlling competition there. These people are the future of our heavenly palace. What if something happens to them? Yes, I also feel that it's inappropriate. Can't the heavenly palace be tested? Why do we have to go to Broken Sword Ocean? I roughly understand what the palace master means. The Broken Sword Ocean has extremely high requirements for the quality of one's soul, but not everyone can enter. In recent years, the Broken Sword Ocean has been rampant with pirates, and many people have been wandering around. It is unknown whether they will disturb the sky riding soul competition. Elders whispered to each other with different expressions on their faces. Some were worried, some were angry, and most of them were puzzled. Palace Master Han, Broken Sword Ocean is under the jurisdiction of Limitless Sect. Can you guarantee its safety? Elder Gue stood on the high platform, his robe fluttering in the wind. Hearing this, Han Wulong slowly walked out from the crowd. His entire body was surging with energy. A ferocious aura that seemed to have transcended heaven and earth spread out. It was extremely fierce, and wherever he went, the people around him would all retreat. He cupped his fists towards Duanmu Xiaoman and Elder Guyu who were sitting on high chairs. His tiger-like eyes shone brightly as he said softly, Palace Master Duanmu, Elder Guyu, if you have the mood to hold this event at Broken Sword Sea, my Limitless Sect will definitely send experts to guard the place. I guarantee that no one will cause trouble at Broken Sword Sea. I just don't know why Palace Master Duanmu has chosen Broken Sword Ocean and not any other place. Could it be that you are stalling for time, for Sui? Guyue glanced at Palace Master Duanmu. There was still no warmth on his cold face. It was hard to fathom what he was thinking. Boom! The Duanmu Xiaoman, who had been silent all this time, walked lightly like a fairy. Her white robe was like a cloud of mist, and between the gauze, her snow-white skin was faintly discernible, full of grace and elegance. Slowly, he walked to the front of the stage and said coldly, Han Wulong, since when did my Yuqian Palace need your limitless sect protection? Everyone, listen up. The Imperial Soul Competition is about to begin. Are we going to choose talents? Or are we going to choose people who can rival the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 ocean? Everyone fell silent. This year's Heavenly Rider Soul competition was different from the previous ones. In fact, it was to prepare for the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament that would take place in less than 10 days. Hence, the individual strength of the individual Heavenly Rider Soul competition was not of much use. If you don't even dare to step out of Cloud State and only dare to cause trouble in Heavenly Palace, how can you be considered a member of Heavenly Palace? When did my command Heavenly Palace raise such a coward? Boom! With a ka-ka sound, the soul energy poured out like a flood. Immediately, the area of more than 1,000 meters around the plaza began to crack. Everyone was shocked. This sentence had a hidden meaning. Immediately, the teaching elders standing at the side nodded their heads and didn't dare to have any objections. They said bluntly, Palace Master is right. As soon as the energy was released, the entire plaza was filled with a devastating wind that penetrated through space. The violent energy made everyone's heart tremble. Palace Master Duanmu's return meant that the heavenly palace that was united from top to bottom had returned once again. The entire plaza was filled with an extremely heavy and dignified atmosphere. Han Wulong, who was standing in the front, hurriedly created an extremely fierce golden energy barrier under his feet. Above the barrier, the space rippled like ripples and instantly dissipated. Forcefully suppressing the shock in his heart, Han Wulong thought, this woman Could it be that she really broke through to the legendary celestial realm? What exactly is the celestial realm? I guess only she knows. He and Elder Guyue glanced at each other. Both of their brows were filled with shock. Duanmu had determined the world with a single move. Now that Duanmu had this kind of strength, Heavenly Palace would only rise to a higher level in the future. Not to mention my limitless sex grand elders, I'm afraid that even those eccentrics of Heavenly Palace are far inferior to Duanmu Xiaoman. How did she cultivate? Truly a freak. Han Wulong's breathing became heavier and heavier. Shock and astonishment filled his heart. Afraid of the sacred mountain? Scheming against each other, forming factions, creating trouble out of nothing. When has my command Heavenly Palace been like this? Duanmu Xiaoman said faintly. These few simple words were like icicles that chiseled into the hearts of everyone present. Below the stage, Jun Haoyan felt that every word was directed at him. He bit his lips and clenched his fists so hard that dark red blood flowed out. Thump, thump, thump. Jun Haoyan's slender figure slowly walked out of the crowd. He looked at Duanmu Xiaoman and saw Duanmu Xiaoman's frosty eyes. The gaze of a superior made Jun Haoyan involuntarily tremble. Then he half knelt and said respectfully, "Palace Master, Haoyan is willing to be the first to go to Broken Sword Sea. If there are any thieves, Haoyan is willing to eliminate them for Heavenly Palace." Everyone's eyes changed. Jun Haoyan, who had always been aloof and ignored worldly affairs, was actually going to be the first to go. Then he understood that he no longer had anyone to rely on. If he didn't work hard, he might really disappear into the crowd. Now was a chance to show off. A trace of gratification flashed across Guyue's kind face. Zhuo Qiufeng's disciple was really much stronger than his master. Let's go together. Haoyan doesn't have to do this. Jun Haoyan's eyes changed rapidly. A trace of nervousness flashed across his face as he hurriedly said, "Palace Master, elders, Haoyan is willing to go. Even though Master is guilty now, the members of Heavenly Palace aren't cowards. I'm willing to take the lead for Heavenly Palace." Duanmu Xiaoman still didn't change. She glanced at Jun Haoyan before she pulled out a pitch-black, teardrop-shaped spatial rift from her palm. Instantly, the entire square was filled with rubble, and the hurricane created by the spatial exchange caused everyone to feel suffocated. A spatial rift. Some of the young disciples present exclaimed in shock. Everyone, including Li Shiren and Achu, were completely astounded at this moment. On the other hand, all the elders present seemed to have gotten used to it. The origin ancestor realm could affect space and form a small spatial domain that belonged to oneself. Once one reached the origin domain realm, one could really teleport, move mountains, move seas, and traverse space. I heard that this woman reached the origin domain realm a few decades ago. Looks like she held back against me all those years ago. She's really too strong. Han Wulong's face twitched, and he was extremely astounded. Chapter 1635. A violent sonic boom resounded throughout the land. The plaza that had been strengthened by experts started to crack again because of the enormous pressure. Cracks that looked like spider webs quickly spread out. Shattered rocks and dust filled the air. The ground within 1,000 meters started to shake violently, as if there was an earthquake. An incomparably terrifying pressure surged through the world like a tidal wave. Everyone's vitality surged as they stopped moving. Duanmu Xiaoman's eyes were as cold as ice. She looked down at everyone as if she was suppressing all living things. She said calmly, "No one needs to take the lead. Those who don't need to go don't need to stay in Heavenly Command Palace either." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure floated far away. What followed was an even more monstrous energy wave. Duanmu Xiaoman's eyes were vast. She faintly glanced at the distant peak after the earthquake before flying into the spatial rift like a light swan. Only the terrified Heavenly Command Palace disciples were left behind. Jun Haoyan, who had volunteered himself just now, saw the indescribably shocking absolute power with his own eyes. His eyes flashed with extraordinary light. Immediately, his vital energy surged. He stepped on his profound handle, and with a leap, he entered the spatial crack in an instant. Go! The Heavenly Command Palace disciples shouted in a low voice. In an instant, many Heavenly Command Palace disciples rushed into the spatial rift like a tide. Light flickered, and lightning flashed across the spatial rift. Hundreds of Heavenly Command Palace disciples entered in an orderly manner. Whoosh! Don't let Jun Haoyan take the lead. Quick! Disciples of Heavenly Command Palace, charge! Dust rose amidst the roars. The disciples who were able to participate in the Heavenly Command Soul competition were the luckiest of the luckiest. Right now, they didn't dare to delay in the slightest. They all hoped to win some attention and the Palace Master's favor. When everyone had entered the spatial rift, only the people of Lingyue Peak and the vassals and elders were left in the plaza. Long Pasan suddenly stood up. His robes fluttered as he looked at the spatial rift. His eyes were slowly filled with shock. He growled, "Old men, let's go too." Luo Wuya and the other elders also stood up. They looked at Elder Gyue and said softly, "Elder Gyue, why aren't you moving? Don't make Palace Master Duanmu wait." Gyue, on the other hand, looked solemn and hesitant. Behind him, Han Yuro, Ah Chu, and the others looked solemn and remained silent. None of them showed any signs of moving. Han Wulong saw that Lingyue Peak wasn't moving. Since the Infinite Sect was an outsider, he felt even more embarrassed to move. He stood where he was with a solemn expression. After a few breaths, they arrived at the peak behind the epicenter. The distant mountains were dark green, and the white mist was serene. There was a sense of mystery in the tranquility. With a sigh, Gyue waved his sleeves and said to the elders, "Let's go." Whether it was fortune or fate, it would all be borne by Su Hao himself. Let the heavenly soul race begin. Chong or Inner, Chuer, Sect Master Han Euro, let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying energy fluctuation spread out from under Guyu's feet. The surrounding air seemed to have solidified. In an instant, he rushed into the space crack. Behind him, the people entered the crack one by one with solemn faces. Broken Sword Ocean was a strategic location in Yunzhou. There was a cliff in the middle of the ocean. The cliff looked like a sword, hence the name. There were also rumors that the Broken Sword Ocean had the Sky Splitter Broken Sword that had been passed down since ancient times. There were many different opinions. The depths below were unfathomable, and the seawater had a natural pressure. The further down one went, the higher the demand for soul energy. Many martial artists and soul bearers had lost their lives here, and there were an astonishing number of deceased people's weapons. This was true. Back in the Nine Stars Valley, when Merciless West saw Yunzhou's floating silver wood, he said that the Broken Sword Ocean was rich in floating silver wood. However, they were all 10,000 meters below the surface. Back then, Merciless West, who was at the third level of the Origin Emperor realm, could only dive 5,000 meters below the surface. This showed how dangerous the Broken Sword Ocean was. There were even remnant soul, energies, or sea savage, demonic beasts that had been hidden for many years. It was a paradise for mercenary alliances and bandit groups to explore. At this moment, the sky was obscure. The dark clouds were like crouching giant beasts. The roaring wind and thunder indicated the arrival of a violent gale. As lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, the pressure in the sky was at its lowest. The members of the Hatian Palace who were standing on the high ground of the Broken Sword Ocean had a solemn expression. This was because the heavenly soul race was about to begin. Bang! As the space crack closed, lightning flashed like white pythons. Elder Gyue brought Ling Yefeng and landed on the high cliff. Huff huff. The sea breeze had a fishy smell. There was a dangerous aura in the air. Everyone held their breaths slightly. Elder Guyu strode to Duanmu. Xiao Man sighed like a meteor, whispered a few words, then said in a clear voice, "Today's heavenly soul race will combine the soul-spirit examination and the 4 events. it will be fairer to use the dangerous underground and natural spiritual pressure of the broken sword ocean as the benchmark. Heaven, earth, mystic yellow, stars, and moon. Alchemists and blacksmiths will compete from 1 to 7,000 meters. Every 1,000 meters corresponds to the grade of the elixir or weapon. Guyue paused for a moment. He looked at the silent expression of the people around him and continued speaking. For example, if you want to refine a heaven-grade elixir, you'll have to dive 6,000 to 7,000 meters. Every 1,000 meters, the Palace Lord has already found the corresponding flat ground and made a heavenly soul race mark. All disciples will have to find a flat ground first before you can start refining. The natural spiritual pressure inside can help you finish the elixir quickly. However, the success depends on you. The prerequisite is that you have to dive to the corresponding depth. Otherwise, it will be ineffective. Wow! Immediately, the faces of the entire heavenly soul race changed. The spiritual pressure at the bottom of the broken sword ocean was no small matter. Even if one cultivated their soul energy all year round, it would not be so easy to resist. Adding on the fact that there were demonic beasts at the bottom of the ocean, this kind of competition would be 10 times harder than the heavenly soul race. Long Pasan and the others who were about to speak were pulled back by Luo Wuya. He whispered, "Today is not a selection of talents. We are going to the Heavenly Wind Ranking Tournament to fight for the Heavenly Soul Race. Think about it carefully. The Palace Lord is free to decide." Immediately, all the elders fell silent. Yesterday, Luo Wuya had been specially called in by the Palace Lord. All the dissatisfaction in his heart had been digested by the Palace Lord. After all, alchemy and blacksmithing were only about finding a place to refine them. How could heaven-grade and earth-grade elixirs be refined overnight? If they wanted to refine a heaven-grade elixir, they would only need to dive to a depth of 4,000 to 5,000 meters. This kind of spiritual pressure was not difficult for the disciples of the heavenly soul race. It was much simpler than cultivating the spirit-controlling race. Elder Giyue continued, "The registration and candidates will be carried out as before. Although the main selection is for the Heavenly Wind Ranking Tournament, the disciples of the Alchemy Dao and Blacksmithing Dao will be able to obtain first place. In the future, they will be heavily nurtured by the Heavenly Soul Race. Everyone need not worry." Chapter 1636. Hearing this, many of the Command Heavenly Palace disciples nodded their heads, but they couldn't help but fall into deep thought. If the most common alchemy and tool refining tasks were already so difficult, then what about the two important tasks of soul cultivation and martial cultivation? Guyue said faintly, "Soul cultivation and martial cultivation will be combined into a chaotic battle mode. From 7,000 meters to 20,000 meters is the scope of the competition. If you can't reach 7,000 meters, you can choose to give up now." Wah, this is too harsh. It can only be counted from 7,000 meters? That's right. It can only be counted after 7,000 meters. Although soul control masters require more soul energy than alchemy and tool refining, it can't be like this. It's not fair. The disciples beside him were all silently protesting. Everyone was looking at their master, hoping that he could say something more. Just the threshold of 7,000 meters was enough to eliminate the majority of people. Moreover, at 7,000 meters, the battles would be very serious. No one would let the other go deeper. If there were sea demons causing trouble, this competition would be extremely interesting to watch. Elder Guyue, isn't this martial cultivation and soul control a bit too harsh? Some elders asked solemnly. Risk and reward will always coexist. This year's prizes are also very rich. The first place in alchemy and tool refining will receive a mysterious grade high-tier pill, mysterious heavenly flame pill. As soon as Guyu said this, everyone's eyeballs fell to the ground. The Dongxian heavenly fire pill was already a rare treasure just because it was a high-grade, profound-grade pill. Adding on the fact that it had great benefits for soul energy refinement, It was a precious pill that countless soul cultivators dreamed of. Then what about the chaotic battle? If alchemy and tool refining had such rewards, then wouldn't the chaotic battle be even more tempting? Everyone in the command Heavenly Palace perked up their ears and listened carefully. Those who participated in the chaotic battle would first think about how to dive deeper. As for the battle, if one's cultivation was high enough, there shouldn't be any opponents until the end. Those who can go 10,000 meters deep will be able to obtain 3 Dongxian Heavenly Fire pills. Those who can reach 15,000 meters will receive a mid-tier magic tool, Azure Flame Cauldron. Wah! Even a first-level Sky Origin Venerate powerhouse wouldn't be able to enter 15,000 meters at will. It seemed like the 9-Star Valley, which had been able to excavate the floating silver wood from 10,000 meters below the ground, couldn't have been achieved by relying on one's own strength. The 15,000-meter reward was too tempting. It was a mid-tier ritual item, second only to a saint item. Plus, the green flame Cauldron and purple flame Yang Cauldron could combine to form the heaven-controlling divine cauldron. This was never a secret in heaven-controlling palace. Whoever obtained the blue flame Cauldron and the purple flame Yang Cauldron would be able to use it to synthesize the Saint Artifact Fire Cauldron. In the future, they would have a very eye-catching progress on the path of alchemy and artifact forging. Sister, the green flame Cauldron, isn't that big, Brother Su? Chu's ears perked up, and she stared at Duanmu Xiaoman. Her cold and charming face was a little absent-minded. Sure, I know. Don't let anyone know that Big Brother Su has that thing on him. Otherwise, it will cause big trouble. Li Shiran looked around vigilantly. But where is Big Brother Su? It's about to start, but I don't see Big Brother Su's figure. Chu was a little anxious. On the other side, a nosy elder asked Elder Gua, what if someone can reach the 15,000-meter to 20,000-meter level? Guyu's interest was piqued, and a trace of seriousness appeared on his benevolent face as he said, it would be the fortune of our imperial palace to have such a genius. For 7 days, he can choose any pill or magic tool he wants from the imperial palace. At the same time, he can directly receive the guidance of the Grand Elder, allowing him to shine in the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament. Why? Upon hearing this, many elders and disciples' eyes lit up. How is this choosing a battle talent? This was choosing the next generation of palace masters. To be able to receive the guidance of the Grand Elder, he would benefit endlessly for the rest of his life. In the future, he would definitely be the #1 person in heaven-controlling palace. I want to go down to 15,000-meter level. I want to turn around. I must succeed. Jun Haoyan's heart was filled with anger, and his battle intent surged like fireworks. His boiling blood could not wait to plunge into the sea of broken swords. Just when everyone was excited, the space fluctuated rapidly, and a violent force carried a thunderous voice from afar. Palace Master Duanmu, if I go deeper than 20,000-meter level, what will happen? At this time, the sky was filled with dark clouds, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard. A white dragon-shaped remnant soul rushed over from afar. In an instant, the surrounding space was enveloped by an extremely violent soul energy. The energy spread out, and the surrounding space rippled violently. A huge demonic aura lingered in the sky, approaching like lightning. Everyone's eyes widened in horror. It's the White Flood Dragon God. It's the Duanmu Qingtian's White Flood Dragon God. The leading elder knew that he had said something wrong, and quickly covered his mouth, not saying anything else. Rumble! The 9 heavens roared, and the ferocious beast snuck over. Roar! The white flood dragon that spanned across the sky was like a ball of white light. In the blink of an eye, it arrived at the sea of broken swords. The young man, standing on the head of the flood dragon's robe, fluttered. Under the sea breeze, his hair fluttered behind him, and he looked majestic. The terrifying force around him was accompanied by the fiery red primordial chi. It was like a ripple of divine brilliance. The chi that crossed the sky was like a wave that pushed fiercely into the distance. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. A dragon and a young man. The monstrous beast's shadows spanned across the sky. The temperature in the entire space dropped sharply at this moment. A wave of cold air spread between heaven and earth, and the space ripples were frozen. Everyone's surging heart stopped as well. Those who recognized him were Li Shiran and Chu from Lingua Peak. They were pleasantly surprised. Who else could it be other than Su Yi to make such a grand entrance? Su Yi, Han Yuro blurted out. She rushed out of the crowd and looked at the proud figure in the low sky. Her sparkling tears were instantly blown away by the sea breeze. Big Brother Su. It's Big Brother Su. It's really Big Brother Su. I knew Big Brother Su wouldn't die. Chu and Li Shiran supported each other. The young man in their eyes was invincible. He was still as brave and invincible as before, including the elders and all the disciples of Yutian Palace. Whether they had seen Su Yi or not, their hearts were surging with shock at this moment. The white flood dragon god of the Duanmu Qingtian. Oh my god, he can actually trigger it. He can trigger the white flood dragon god and activate the mountain guarding array. It seems that the rumors are true. This is Su Yi. He is indeed more majestic than the rumors. His divine might is impressive. Are we going to compete with him? Aye. The few Command Celestial Palace disciples looked at the incomparably ferocious white flood dragon god and the domineering and destructive Su Yi. Their hearts instantly lost their courage, and they silently lowered their heads. Their lofty aspirations from before were instantly reduced by half. Chapter 1637. The ferocious beast raised its head towards the sky. Its huge eyes were like gems, emitting a faint light as it fiercely stared at the crowd. Awu, the white flood dragon god, slightly twisted its body, and its incomparably huge body raised the waves high into the air. The yuan qi under Su Yi's feet suddenly rose, and the soul energy fluctuations around his body revealed a mysterious feeling. Suddenly, a bright light burst out from his eyes as he spoke again. Palace Master Duanmu, if I were to dive below 20,000 meters, what would you do? Su Yi's eyes lit up as he spoke to the crowd below. At this moment, a gurgling sound came from the crowd's throats. Everyone swallowed their saliva. This Su Yi was challenging the Duanmu Xiaoman. The Duanmu Xiaoman had already stood up at this time. Her eyes looked at the young man riding the dragon, and a trace of undetectable fluctuation flashed through her calm eyes. Her cherry lips lightly pursed as she said, "Beyond 20,000 meters, what would you do?" As soon as her voice fell, the Duanmu Xiaoman's voice was filled with an unparalleled arrogance and domineering aura. Suddenly, a sonic boom resounded in the sky. The pervasive, icy aura wreaked havoc in the air, following a huge sonic boom that resounded through the space. The soul pressure suddenly carried a violent force as it smashed towards Su Yi, who was on top of the remnant soul. Under such a violent attack, the white flood dragon god's body suddenly moved. Its cold scales were like sharp blades as it fiercely let out a sharp cry. Without any hesitation, Su Yi formed a hand seal and used the art of driving the heavens again. The white flood dragon god immediately flapped its wings, and a ray of light burst out from its mouth. Like a small meteor, it directly bombarded the Duanmu Xiaoman. Pong! Su raised his eyebrows and formed a hand seal in his palm. With a loud shout, the art of driving the heavens and the heavenly origin demonic soul spread out at the same time. The energy that swept through the world caused Su Yi's body to shake. When the two of them collided with each other, Su Yi took a step forward with the 100 transformation steps. The fiery red wings on his back flapped with the wind, and the fiery red light was like a divine fire descending from the heavens. The domineering, destructive force attacked everyone's heart and soul. In an instant, a huge spatial crack appeared in the sky. Suddenly, space trembled as if it was about to shatter. Spatial energy filled the air, and at the point of collision, The heaven and earth energy quickly turned into a tornado that connected the heavens and the earth. A huge beam of energy directly condensed and smashed into the white flood dragon god's body. The white flood dragon god's eyes were filled with fear, and a dragon's roar came out. It was forced back 1,000 meters by the Duanmu Shao man, and it howled in pain. The white scales on its body were overflowing with light, and the 5 claws under its abdomen trembled. Its pressure was immediately suppressed, and its ferocious eyes withered a bit. Bright red blood flowed out from its scales, falling into the sea of broken swords. Little White, Su-Yi angrily shouted in his heart. The ripples in the air shattered, and Su-Yi instantly rushed to the white flood dragon god's side. Everyone present was incomparably shocked. How could he control the white flood dragon god? The white flood dragon god was the remnant soul of the driving the heavens river. How could it be so easy to control? Could it be that he really is Qing Tian? The eyes of the several elders behind him lit up as they stared at the small figure in the void. In an instant, the sky changed color and dark clouds rose. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, wherever the light pillar passed, the heaven-shaking aura brought about waves of thousands of meters high, and a monstrous storm that covered the sky burst out. The pouring waves suddenly exploded, and it was as if tens of thousands of cannonballs were exploding on the surface of the sea. The spatial cracks quickly spread, and the energy swept out. Wherever it passed, everything turned into fragments and dissipated. In a short moment, the rolling waves on the surface of the sea rose and fell, and countless shocking explosions sounded. In the distance, the white flood dragon roared, and the cold light in its eyes withered. And in the sky full of water bullets, a ball of flame was like a butterfly in the rain, dodging back and forth. After checking the white flood dragon god's injuries, Su-Yi did not retreat, but instead advanced. His body turned into a flame and suddenly burst out. The golden flame in his hand was constantly waving, and the water bullets were blasted to the bottom of the sea. Rumble! The void rumbled, and the world shook. Terrifying energy swept out, and in the sky, a violent storm swept through. Everyone's mind was destroyed, and they constantly used the art of driving the heavens to resist the powerful storm. Guyua looked at Su-Yi, who was spinning back and forth in the sky. At this time, his own aura was gradually becoming chaotic because of Duanmu Shao Man. He immediately shouted, "Palace Master, have mercy!" In the crowd, Han Wulong's tall and sturdy figure was extremely conspicuous. Seeing the two fight in such a short time, he couldn't help but have a serious expression. Good boy. He's Su-Yi. Although he didn't use his full strength, it's already shocking that he could hold on until now. Not bad. Han Wulong's gaze moved, and his eyes were full of praise. He then looked at Han Yuro beside him. Her face was serious and anxious, and her crescent brows were slowly filled with concern. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. All the elders and disciples of the heavenly palace behind him were shocked. Wasn't this Su-Yi heavily injured? Why was his soul energy so much more powerful than before? The white flood dragon god howled in pain in the distance. Duanmu Xiaoman seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes froze. She casually waved her sleeves, and the torrential storm instantly stopped. In the sky, Su-Yi loudly shouted. Lights surged in his palms, and 4 divine lights surrounded him. A domineering and destructive aura suddenly broke through the spatial ripples in front of him. A fiery red figure cut through the sky, and fire energy surged out, bringing with it the momentum of lightning as it instantly rushed to the top of the cliff. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were like divine pawns on his handsome and mature face. The energy around his body shone brightly, causing countless female disciples of the heavenly palace to exclaim in their hearts. As soon as he landed, Su-Yi, who was like a god descending from the heavens, was surrounded by a torrential energy. Everyone present was shocked and amazed. To be able to exchange a few blows with Duanmu Xiaoman without losing in terms of aura, not only did he have an extremely high soul quality, he also had extraordinary courage and wisdom, and even more so, he had absolute strength. At this time, Su Yi was completely looking at Duanmu Xiaoman. A trace of surprise flashed in Su Yi's deep and cold eyes as he thought, "It really is you? The one who beat me up that day was you. The one wearing the veil is indeed you." Then Su Yi gently pressed his palms down, and the seals in his palms changed continuously. The art of driving the heavens around him immediately retracted, and the torrential soul energy also retracted. There was no longer any aura fluctuation, and he laughed heartily. He's Su Yi. Long Pasan, Luo Wuya, and the other elders stroked their chins, and their eyes moved slightly. They had long heard of Su Yi's great name, and now that they saw him, they all nodded inwardly. This little brat is actually completely fine. Gu Yue and Han Wulong were shocked at the same time. From his aura, they could see that Su Yi was refreshed, and the yuan qi around his body was circulating smoothly without any sluggishness. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.